Pardon me, sir. I'm afraid we're a little late with the podcast. Chef tells me we ran out about 10 minutes ago.
Wait a minute. What? Are you joking? No podcast? No podcast. The main reason we came here was for the podcast. No. It's not all right. They should have said that to us at the door. They should have warned us that there was a danger of running out of podcasts. Well, I mean, we drove all the way from New York. No, you know what? Listen, take the podcast. I don't want to share it. I promised my wife the podcast. I want you to bring the podcast for my wife. I promise. Just bring me some coffee. No blueberry pie. What do I want blueberry pie for? That really bugs me.
Are you out?
I'm out, yeah.
You nailed it. That was great.
I had to dig to find a transcript of the script that was very poorly formatted and then cut out all the intermediate dialogue from everyone else. That's my favorite moment in the movie.
It's a good moment. And especially, like, hearing you say it, like, the whole time I was watching the film, I thought Griffin would kill this part. If they remake it again, I mean, honestly, my number one choice for the role.
Should it be like A Star Is Born? Like we just have a Heartbreak Kid every 30-ish years?
Every generation deserves its Heartbreak Kid, yeah.
The problem is they nailed it so hard the last time. It really feels like... This is a genuine thought I had, okay? I don't say this in any sort of self-pitying way. I say this soberly, coming off of 10 months of forced reflection upon every element of my life in quarantine, right? I increasingly have just been in this state of just like, what do I actually want to do with myself? Questioning whether I still want to be like on camera acting. I've been very happy with the voiceover work I'm doing. I was getting very tired of the racket of on camera stuff and the burn of it and whatever. And I'm so scared to get back on set right now that it just feels like by the time I'm vaccinated, it'll have been so long. I wonder if I'll have the drive or whatever. And
you still got it if you
and
want.
It's safe.
You want.
Being on set is safe.
So safe. I mean, Batman got COVID, but other than that, it's safe.
There's not constant breakouts because using tests isn't a good way to determine whether or not people can be in contact. But no, it's fine.
We didn't almost kill young Sheldon. I was talking with
Sheldon in trouble? I didn't know about that.
No, there was a shutdown. There was a flare-up, but he's fine now.
Okay, all right,
I'm going tangent on a tangent, but I was speaking to one of my best friends the other day, and she was like, it's kind of incredible how quickly everyone adopted the same bad attitude that exists with STDs onto COVID. Where it's just like, well, if I trust somebody, I'm not going to get it, right? I had a test like 6 months ago. I'm good. I'm clean, right?
If I trust someone or if they're rich enough.
Right. If they're fancy, I'm not going to get it. If it's in a nice hotel, I'm not going to get it. This is what I was going to say. When I think about all this stuff, the acting stuff, I think more than anything, like, I don't have any desire to be, like, the guy anymore, right? Like, any ambitions I had when I was younger to be, like, a star and a leading man in my own weird way. I'm just like, I don't need that work. I so much prefer coming and getting out. And then I watched this movie, and I was like, if I was ever going to be a movie star, this is exactly who I want to be.
You want to be Grodin.
I want to be Charles Grodin, yeah. And it's because I think he just did this balancing act, and we'll talk about his career, but he somehow became a very odd leading man without ever devoting an ounce of energy towards audience sympathy.
Never.
Never.
And we'll talk, the arc of his career where he's like, yeah, I'll be the lead, and then and then I won't be. Who cares?
Right,
like,
who
I don't
gives
have
a
to be
shit?
the lead all the time, right? I'll be a weirdo.
And then he comes back in family movies as the grumpy. He's like, fine, whatever.
But also, he's like, I don't know, I'll write for, a show as well.
Right.
I can do that. Like, I'll do whatever I want. I'm trying to sort of have a Grodin cadence right now, even if I'm not doing an impression.
Come on, all right, I don't care. I feel like, it's not that like, oh, I only want to play assholes, but I just like, especially from my experience with the tick of just like how much added stress there is if people are like, you got to be likable. People need to be rooting for you, and it's just like, no, you just want to act. You just want to act and hope that what you're doing is compelling enough that people watch. I don't really care about people liking me,
But I mean, I guess the problem is that it's how do you get a movie with the protagonist unlikable in this specific way? How do you get that made today?
Doesn't happen.
Like,
doesn't happen.
You don't get a movie of this size and type made today. But also, even if you did, it would have to have a likable. Yeah, you just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and you look at as a counterpoint Ben Stiller's career, and you look at as a counterpoint the Heartbreak Kid remake and the interesting changes that are made there. But let's say what we're talking about. We're not talking about 2007's Heartbreak Kid.
No, not yet. Maybe one day.
No, because look, we're not talking about the Farrelly brothers. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And this is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion products they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. And this is a mini series on the films of Elaine May. April showers bring Mayflowers this year.
All true.
Because April is May. We're knocking out the shortest filmography we've ever done. And it is an injustice that the filmography is this short.
It's disgusting.
Yep. But this is her second film. In certain ways, I feel like it's her most beloved, even though it's been so out of circulation for so long.
It's her most definable hit, I would say, right? You know,
Right.
and probably, yes, the movie that the most people have heard of at the time. Like, you know, in the 70s, 80s, people knew this movie. Right now, it's like you said. It's so. How did you? I mean, it's on YouTube. Did you see that?
I did. So we'll talk about this in a second. Because yes, this is Heartbreak Kid. This is the Podbreak cast. That is, of course, the name of this miniseries. We're at the titular episode, and we have a long overdue guest. She is not just a great friend of the show, but I feel like internally, and I believe I've said this to you as well, I consider this guest to be our first real fan of the show. Like the first real Blanky, right? Even before Blanky existed as a term.
Yes.
And I come to this recording as a fan, ready to embarrass myself, make myself a specter of everything that can go wrong when someone comes onto a podcast, someone that the other fans can be furious at, and also pick apart the genuine problems with my appearance. I'm really excited to do a bad job.
Oh, God.
Great.
No, I'm such a fan of the show. I think early on I did get a shout out during one of the Star Wars apps, and it was the highlight of my year that year. Obviously that must have been a bad year because everything has been just on the up since then. Currently the best year of my life.
That was the last bad year of your life. Yeah, 2015.
I gotta say, I just listened to I think the most recent ep that came out at the time of this record is the
Marwen, right?
Marwen, and I think you mentioned
a loopy ep
at the end of that the idea of the Star Wars eps being interminable or something like that. And I'm sorry, I don't think there's been a better 30 episode run of a podcast. It just I'm sorry to ruin an episode about another film by gushing over the very podcast that I'm on, but the level of incisive film analysis and the stuff you can learn about not just Star Wars films but filmmaking and media in general by listening to those podcasts, I'm so happy to be on this show, and especially to discuss this film, which is a masterpiece.
Yes.
Well, let me say, our guest today is Avery Edison, our dear friend, a brilliant writer, comedian in her own right. But I remember vividly, because when we started the show, David had his circle of people who followed him from the AV Club and who he knew personally.
A few chumps.
His friends, right? And I had the small circle of people, mostly from the Gethard Show community and having done the Gethard Show podcast, and then my friends. And when we started doing the Phantom podcast, it felt like, oh, we know every single person who's listening. We can chart directly every single person who's listening to the show.
That's absolutely right.
Right. And then I remember it was early on. I want to say it was in that Phantom run, the first 10 episodes. David went, Avery Edison wrote about us. And I said, what?
In Today in Tabs, right?
Right.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You did your Today in Tabs recommendation. And he said, this is like a big deal.
Right.
Like, Avery is cool. She's got good opinions. And she
Right.
actually somehow listens to our show and recommends it to other people who don't know us.
I mean,
Well, I'm tapping out on the episode now. That's me done. I've
it was so
I've
cool.
gushed and gotten some gush in return. It is a Chris Morris Jam style endless gush.
Endless gush. My favorite ever line from Jam is when, do you remember the one, it's the doctor who does the sex line while he's being a doctor, but he does the sex line in the same calm manner as his doctor, and he just picks up the phone. He's like, sorry, 1 second. Yes, I've come on my knee. Yes. And then he hangs up the phone. I think about that all the time.
I'm sorry.
Just that delivery.
What are the two of you talking about?
We're talking about a sketch show, a British.
It's I'm actually not sure how David knows about this. It was a I lived in Canada and America for a short time in my 20s, but basically my whole life I've lived in the country of my birth, Great Britain, Scotland at first, then England.
You're coming to us from Britain right now.
Yeah, I've lived in London, currently in Liverpool. Grew up in Dorset, lovely place to look at, not to experience.
I mean, look, these are all locations that make sense for you to have that reference point. And even spending 100%. Time in Canada, they obviously export a lot of British comedy to Canada.
Although I wonder if Jam made it to Canada. Any Canadians, let me know if Jam made it all the way to Canada, because I doubt it. But yes, you're right. But as you have seemed to have forgotten, I grew up in Britain as well, Griffin.
Oh, David,
but from the ages of 9 to 22, I lived there for 13 years.
Wow. So we were probably in England at the same time.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I would imagine so. I mean,
that is just
even,
the kind of bizarre coincidence. It makes you think, is God real?
Yeah.
Maybe when I was at the Virgin Megastore in freaking Tottenham Court Road or whatever.
No, I was strictly HMV. It couldn't have
strictly.
Happened.
You were
strictly
exclusively HMV. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, can you make the argument for HMV over Virgin?
My mother's weird class prejudices that somehow decided Virgin was good and HMV was bad. Turns out, growing up and living on my own has been a process of learning that the weird preferences I have come from my mother's inscrutable obsession with not looking as poor as we were, and somehow Virgin versus HMV played into that.
Is HMV still going? Is it? Still?
I don't
a
think
thing?
so. No.
No.
I don't think Virgin is either.
I believe HMV still exists in Canada. Am I wrong about that?
And I think there might be one store in London over here.
Yeah,
maybe?
It looks like they've been bought out by some, yeah.
No, you know what? It even closed in Canada. It closed in 2017 in Canada.
Wow.
The HMV in Hampstead, I just spent hours there. And then that thing where, you would go in and you had 10 pounds. Like that was all you had.
10
it's not
pounds?
like you could go in.
Wow, look at Mr. Moneybags.
Oh boy, yeah, money monster over here.
I could buy one thing. That thing where you just sort of go around and you're like, I think it's going to be this. But then you're walking around for ages being like, is there anything that's going to knock this out of my hand?
I grew up incredibly poor. So I truly would not have 10 pounds in my hands. I would just go in there, stare at the thing I wanted. And that thing of maybe if I stare long enough and sadly enough, someone behind the counter will see my desperation and take pity on me and somehow give it to me for free. And then when I finally got a job in my teen years, I spent probably my first paycheck on the series 1 to 3 box set of Family Guy and was the happiest I've ever been.
You had to.
I also owned that box set.
It was a good, but the good seasons.
The good seasons before, yes, and it was like, oh yeah, is this weird show? Is this this silly American show that got canceled kind of fast?
Jets suck, Yankees suck, Krypton sucks. One of the hardest times I've ever laughed in my life.
Wow, this is even crazier than that time Avery bought seasons 1 through 3 at HMV.
No, it's not crazier than that, Peter. It is that.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, how do we get on this? How do we get on Jam? Oh, now I'm trying to remember.
Gushing.
Oh, the praise.
Gushing.
Yes, the praise. No, but it was truly, that's the moment that Dave and I turned to each other and said oh, we might actually be making something that people enjoy.
Someone listens to. Right. Yes. I mean, not to, and we should, not to suggest that the show is some, colossal globes conquering force now. But I do remember, Griffin, at the end of that first year when we did the live show at Union Hall, which is a capacity. What do you think, Griffin? Like 50, 60 people or what? Right? Like however many people you can
I
sit
think
in
you
there.
can standing room 75 maybe. Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Like I was like,
yes.
yeah, right now it's 12.
Post-COVID, 2.
Yeah. Now it's really 2. That space is 2. Yeah.
I just remember saying to you, like, Griff, like, come, is anyone gonna show up to this? Like,
we were terrified that just no one would show up. Yeah.
and you were like, it's okay. We have enough friends and stuff that the people will be there, right? But I was really thinking, like, are we going to walk out to an empty crowd?
No, and I had that exact same fear. And there was also the question of, like, how many of our friends are coming to this out of pity who don't even listen to the show and don't like Star Wars and are not going to be receptive to what we're doing?
100%. I was like, oh no, right. It'll be people who are like, Jesus, they're watching the fucking Revenge of the Sith. I don't want to do this. I have to watch this.
Right, like your mom came and your mom had not seen Revenge of the Sith before and had never listened to the podcast. And you were like, Griffin, I feel bad that she's going to sit here.
My mother had never seen a Star Wars movie before.
Okay, I was about to say that and I wasn't sure if that was correct.
Which really is. Like, my dad saw Star Wars like 7 times in theaters. It's not like it wasn't in the family. Yeah. I watched it, obviously. My mom had just been like, yeah, not for me. And had just successfully dodged for decades.
Astounding that is still the only context in which she has seen any Star Wars film.
No, because she saw The Force Awakens. That was the second movie. Because if you remember, everybody saw that movie. It was that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that movie made very close to $1 billion domestically alone, and everyone went to see it. And my parents and my sister saw it, and that was the last Star Wars movie they'll ever see.
It's same with my
mom.
They
hadn't seen a Star Wars movie in fucking 15 years. They won't see another one, but it was just like, I guess, I don't know, I got to get my license renewed, go see the Star Wars reboot.
She was like, I'd like to see it, and we watched it, and we came out, and I was like, what did you think? And she was like, Harrison Ford was just great. Like, he was so good. I just loved seeing Harrison Ford turning it on, you know? And I was like, yeah, anything else? And she's like, that's it. Those are my thoughts. Like, whatever. She assumed Kylo Ren was just Darth Vader. She didn't, like, want to think about it too hard.
Wow, that's great for Kylo Ren. He's going to be thrilled.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know. He was like, yes, got someone.
Nailed it.
I nailed it.
Yeah. I've shared this anecdote too many times. My mom went to the bathroom during the scene where Kylo kills Han Solo and then came back. And her question after the end of the movie was, why is he just not in the last 30 minutes at all? It's weird that they just kind of drop Han Solo as a character.
Oh, boy.
But yes, Avery, your support of the show has always been so deeply meaningful because you are such a smart person, funny person with good taste. Long overdue to have you on the show. Opened up now because of COVID. Forcing us to do episodes with people in different places in the world. And by forcing us, I mean gifting us with the opportunity.
I mean, yeah, when quarantine first locked down, I did see people saying, oh, this is great. All my favorite podcasts can now maybe get some long distance guests. And someone I think even like mentioned me and said, maybe Avery Edison can be on Blank Check, and I like remember faving it and being like, and now to wait. And it's you know, I kept thinking as the lockdowns would ease, like, oh, I've missed the shot. But luckily for me, COVID has kept going, and
thank God.
In that sense, COVID is a victory for me.
And in that sense, Avery, I ask, can you please stop COVID? Because I understand that you stretched this out for a while because you wanted to make sure you got in some of the podcasts.
But now
I was behind. I was behind the UK variants.
Yep. I these new strains they really reek of Avery. I could see your fingerprints all over them. Avery, you said that this film is, in your opinion, a masterpiece.
Yes.
What is your relationship with this movie and with Elaine May overall?
My relationship with Elaine May is that when I was in Canada at comedy school, I performed several of her sketches at various shows. Other than that, I had no relationship until recently when, just entering lockdown and being like, okay, it's time to catch up on some filmmakers. Let's go through some filmographies, maybe find someone who has massive success with a film and then gets a series of blank checks. I don't know where the idea came from for that, but it's something that really just hit me and resonated. And yeah, I watched this with my girlfriend and her sister, and we were losing our minds, and I've watched it a couple more times since then, especially obviously in the run-up to this podcast. I've watched all of the 3 other films she's
on Letterboxd,
directed.
right? You were logging them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I was cramming essentially for this record. And yeah, it's criminal that according to IMDb, like obviously you'll get to this on the episode, but I guess Ishtar created the term movie jail, or at least that's
Absolutely.
what the trivia section there says.
Yes. It is one of the canonical modern bounces.
Yeah, due in no part to any structural gendered forces.
Well, look, we'll certainly get to all this stuff when we talk about Ishtar, but it is fascinating. I saw her. There was the thing where like Ishtar had been out of circulation for so long, along with this movie. I mean, this is another issue, is that like
we've long mulled her because Ishtar is like a top 10 famous bounce of all time, right? Ishtar, and with that has critical reappraisal and has
right. I love it. Yeah. But that, her films have largely been harder to see for a long time.
Yeah.
Ishtar and Mikey and Nicky are thankfully more readily available now. New Leaf as well. But a lot of them were sort of off home video and streaming legal avenues for a long time. This one still is. And the perception was always that like, oh, Ishtar was like such an atomic bomb and the press whirlwind around it was so horrible that no one ever let her make a movie again. And I saw when there was they'd remastered Ishtar, they were going to release it on Blu-ray. They did like a 92nd Street Y screening with her doing a Q&A afterwards, which was just like, oh my God. I went to go see it as like a curio because I just assumed like, oh, this movie's bad, right? I just want to see this out of completism. And I'll say other things she said when we get to our Ishtar episode, but they asked her about it, like the feeling of being in movie jail, whoever was moderating. And she said like, it wasn't that. I mean, I could have made other movies. I just like was over it at that point.
Right, because it was a horrible experience.
She was so pissed off by the experience of Ishtar, compounded with the experience of Mikey and Nicky, which is always also very difficult, that I think, like, look, people should have been tripping over themselves to continue to give her opportunities. She should not have gotten the reputation that she did. But still, she very much speaks as if it was an empowered decision of like, I'm not going to play this fucking game anymore. I don't want to grovel at these people's shoes for the chance to direct like a talking horse movie so I can get myself back in the good graces of the people who think Ishtar is bad, you know?
Well, you mentioned Mikey and Nicky being troubled, but and again, this is just going off of like IMDb and old reviews, so maybe it's wrong, but it seems like even the production processes for A New Leaf and Heartbreak Kid, like it seems like she's always wrestling for control, and I don't know if that's part of her temperament or the choices she makes. Obviously, Mikey Nicky, she shot like 1.5 million feet of film, and I think for A New Leaf she shot like 100 hours of it.
It was like, and she presented a 3-hour cut, and the studio took it away from her. Yeah, no, it's true. And she never had a relaxed creative process where she was totally in control and was not being second guessed at some point.
Yeah.
This is probably the chillest, and she still has to deal with Neil Simon being like, don't touch my words, and even this was not a smooth sailing, right?
No, and it's such a bizarre kind of setup because it's like this is kind of her only for hire work, right? I mean, like, Beatty is the one who comes to her with the idea for Ishtar, but she develops it, right?
Yeah, and that's also Beatty being like, I am the magnanimous, wonderful Warren Beatty, and I want to get you back into movies. And then when she starts making the movie, he's like, I've got a lot of ideas. I am famous control freak Warren Beatty. It was me all along.
Right. But that having been said, all 4 of these movies, it feels like are exactly what she wanted to make. That she stands behind them with complete pride and complete ownership, but it was an absolutely torturous process to get there.
They're all so good. I think A New Leaf might be the one where that's not true, but the others, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
They're all so good, and they're all so thematically like linked and clearly hers. Like they all have this running theme of what will you put up with to be with another person.
They're all about weird relationships, but the first two movies are about very toxic, ill-begotten male-female relationships, and the latter two are about weird, codependent, intimate male relationships.
Right, yeah, it's true.
Right,
like,
but they are just about, yes, these uneasy couplings of people, who end up one way or another having to coexist with each other, whether or not it's actually the healthiest thing for them.
It also she constantly was like, well, the movie should be 3 hours long, and like would then fight with studios or producers or whoever who'd be like, well, it can't be 3 hours long, Elaine, like it's a comedy, right? But
you see the takes in Heartbreak Kid, where it's a Neil Simon script. He writes this thing expecting it to be rat-a-tat-tat, and the joy of this movie is the slowness of it.
Yeah,
and the way this back and forth dialogue just crawls along, and the way I don't think you would have such a humanizing portrayal of basically every character without the fact that she insists on slowing it down so much. And so you can see why, she finds the joy in these long moments. Of course she's going to want to create long films.
It's crazy that Neil Simon wrote this, not in terms of the setup, but just in terms of like, it doesn't sound like a Neil Simon, you're saying.
That's the weird thing. It's like, this is the only movie she directs that isn't her own script, right? She obviously collaborates with other people on her projects. She incubates them, develops them. But this is a movie where Neil Simon writes the script and says, I want Elaine May to direct this. I want her to be hired to direct this film. And then she gets very involved with it, right? But also, this is the only thing that Neil Simon ever wrote. It's the only screenplay he ever wrote that was an adaptation of his own play or his own original script.
Is that right? I mean, he has so many scripts that, Jesus, right. But it was always a play first.
But he never adapted someone else's work. Right.
Right. He's right. You're right. He's adapting someone else's work. Yeah.
So you have two major kind of American comedic forces of the 20th century, both doing things that they never did before and never did again. Yeah. Right? And you have Bruce J. Freeman, and you look at the poster for this movie.
Great poster.
The main poster is like a cartoon drawing of a heart that looks like it was drawn by a 3-year-old. Like a sort of like lumpy, misshapen heart.
A kid, if you will.
Yes. And it just says, The Heartbreak Kid in big red letters. But in between each of those words, it says, Elaine May directed it, Neil Simon wrote it, Bruce J. Friedman conceived it. That is a wild way to sell a movie that are just like, here are 3 high-class humorists. We're not telling you who's in it. We're not telling you what the premise of the movie is. Here is a doodle, and we're telling you that these 3 very witty, urbane people had their fingers on this.
But then you get into the movie, and it says, like, right at the start, an Elaine May film. Like, yeah, it's not afraid to, ditch those two and make it very clear, like, this is just her.
And it also says Neil Simon's The Heartbreak Kid, because Neil Simon didn't want to give Bruce J. Friedman the story by credit in the opening. So he gets it in the end credits, but they don't credit either writer at the beginning. I think they just do that possessive.
Because like the Neil Simon's branding was so prevalent. Yeah.
There's you're talking about the weird slowness of this movie. There's a great piece that I'll probably keep referencing too much that I read. It's a Bright Wall Dark Room piece from like a year ago that Ethan Warren wrote called Still Heartbroken After All These Years. And he compares this movie, the 2007 remake, but more importantly says, like, let's look at like the Arthur Hiller, Neil Simon movies that come out the couple of years before this, right? Like, look at the difference in adaptation and performance and editing and rhythms between, like Out of Towners or
Plaza Suite,
Odd Couple,
right? All that stuff. I mean, funnily, like Elaine May is in California Suite a few years later, like, which is a pretty bad movie, although she kind of rules in it. She and Matthau are kind of they're fun, but like, which is another just where it's like, well, we're doing Neil Simon. This will be done in an hour. Like, let's
Right.
it's like a play. Like, just do your dialogue, hit your marks. Neil Simon already did all the work for you, right? Like, that's,
Yeah. I mean, I'll just read this quick graph. But Avery, what you're saying about Neil Simon, immediately you're associated with this rat-a-tat-tat thing, right? And even like Mike Nichols, who comes from the exact same place as Elaine May, their sensibilities are formed by each other, is a very distinctive filmmaker. When he makes a Neil Simon movie, it is very much Mike Nichols doing a Neil Simon movie, as opposed to Mike Nichols turning a Neil Simon play into a Mike Nichols movie.
It's always going to be Neil Simon's
right
first and foremost, right?
So this quote here: the screenplay eschews much of this melancholy in favor of a distinctly Simon-esque cavalcade of gaffes, quips, and barbs. It's not hard to imagine putting the script up on a Broadway stage with lines like "I don't hand out my daughter to newlyweds," bellowed at the cheap seats to thunderous laughter. No, it's not hard at all to imagine. Perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable Heartbreak Kid, perhaps one directed by Arthur Hiller, with all the rapid-fire line readings and indifferent camera work of the out-of-towners. And the whole point he's kind of making is, like, she forces you to actually live in the circumstances of this movie. It is a movie where she is forcing you to not just get out with the cheap laughs of, like, oh, what a funny setup, that you really just have to live with this guy. And there's such a big shift between this one and the remake in terms of, and Neil Simon always said, like, he complained that she cast Jeannie Berlin. There's this awful story where he did not know Jeannie Berlin was Elaine May's daughter and went and complained to Elaine May that, quote, the actress she hired wasn't sexy enough.
Neil.
Right.
Which is also sort of the point of the character in a way.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I think she looks like an absolute dime when she arrives at the pool in that bikini. But yeah, the whole point is that, like, you put her next to Cybill Shepherd and she's going to look like yesterday's leftover dinner, next to a prime rib, right? And yeah, that is a funny, a weird thing for him to complain about. But, men will complain about weird things.
Yes, welcome to Blank Check with Griffin and David. He really pushed for Diane Keaton to play that character, which would have been so fundamentally ruinous.
That'd be a disaster. Because you'd be like, I mean, maybe Diane Keaton would deliver this incredible performance, and you're like, yeah, no, but like, it would make no sense. Carry on.
But that's the point. I mean,
that.
the problem is she would turn it into a performance, right? It would be like, well, let's get someone who's more conventionally sexy at the beginning of the movie so the guys in the audience understand why he married her in the first place, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, how could he resist? And then let's have Diane Keaton give this very, very masterfully crafted comedic performance of a nightmare person so that everyone in the audience understands why he doesn't want to be with her anymore. And there's something just to the casting, aside from the fact that Jeannie Berlin is so good, there's something just to the fact that in the role of the undesirable woman, the director hires her daughter, right? You're immediately putting so much more empathy into that character than the structure of the story demands it. And Grodin, the story about Simon complaining that Jeannie Berlin wasn't sexy enough comes from Grodin's memoir. And he also said that for years, Neil Simon tried to do a good Heartbreak Kid musical, and he hired Bacharach to do the songs. He went through like so many different teams to try to do it, and he could never crack it because he said he couldn't figure out the interiority of that character. Wow. And it's so telling in terms of like what Elaine May contributes here, not just in what she puts into that character, Lila, right?
Yeah.
But also just the general, I'm not going to let this movie get away with being surfacey. I'm not going to let it get away with being like, well, of course I would do the same thing in this guy's shoes,
Right.
It's really trying to drill down into the most uncomfortable aspects of what this situation represents, culturally and everything. Yeah.
For people who like maybe only know of the remake and know that there was an older one and know the premise and all that, it might be shocking to hear that the Eddie Albert and Jeannie Berlin got Oscar nominations for this.
Yes.
Right.
And it really is like, yeah, that level of empathy that she puts into these characters. Like even the line you said, I don't hand my daughter out to newlyweds. It's a funny line. And also like when he says it, like yeah, it's you can see the rage mixed with confusion, and it's not just a tossed off line.
No.
He really means it.
He delivers it like it's a Dirty Harry line. Like, that's what's incredible about it. And you're like, that line would work on Broadway. I could see a funny actor. I could see Richard Kind delivering that and killing, getting an applause break.
The befuddled dad who's just like, what's this whirlwind romance that's blowing through my boring life? Instead, Eddie Albert's just like, who's this fucking punk who won't leave me alone and is essentially harassing my daughter? Like, that's how he plays it.
Just absolute rage. And Jeannie Berlin plays that character as a real human being. And, aside from the fact that this is not the type of movie that you think of getting 2 acting nominations, especially in a modern context, it's also like the 2 performances that got nominated are the dilemmas in the movie. Like, they're the characters that are like the conflicts to the main character, but it speaks to how fully rounded those characters are and how insightful those performances are.
Not just that, but this is a, crackerjack Oscar year where, like, Eddie Albert is nominated alongside 3 actors from The Godfather and Joel Grey in Cabaret. Like,
wow.
Pacino it's category fraud that Pacino was supporting actor, but like that's like one of the most insane best supporting actor lineups ever.
Yeah.
Caan, Duvall.
Right.
And then, supporting actress, you've only got the I guess they didn't even nominate Talia Shire. That's rude.
She got nominated for
part 2. She's so good in one though, and she's Anyway.
I love that Griffin calls it 2 as opposed to part 2. I just finished watching All the Sopranos, and that's a Soprano. They call it 2, not part 2. What do you prefer, 1 or 2?
No, they call it 2. But just a huge year, a huge Oscar-y movie year, right? It's not like these guys snuck in or whatever. Like it's just these were exceptional performances that are kind of like burned into your brain even after the character is in Jeannie Berlin's case, like gone.
David, I need to do a solo ad read quickly. We deserve to know what we're putting in our bodies and why, especially when it comes to something we take every day. Like, God, what kind of word would I use to describe a thing you do every day? Like a ritual. It's the name of the company. It's the name of the sponsor of today's episode. Now, Ritual's clean, vegan-friendly multivitamin is formulated with high-quality nutrients in bioavailable forms your body can actually use. I don't think I have ever read the word bioavailable before. What won't you find in these vitamins? Sugars. GMOs? Nah. Major allergens? No way. Synthetic fillers? Yeah, right. Artificial colorants? Hold on. Let me just check my notes here and see if that's it. Nope. Plus, the fresh taste and delayed release capsule design makes taking your vitamins easy. I can hear you all out there. You're going, well, Griffin, why did you choose to take Ritual? How long have you been taking them? What do you like about these multivitamins so far? I don't understand why you're taking that tone with me. I feel like I'm being very respectful in this ad read, and I wish you would extend to me the same courtesy. But I will still answer your questions. I've been taking them for about a year, right about when this little pandemic started, and I stopped going outdoors or seeing sunlight or eating healthily. So these vitamins have been very good to sort of trick my body into thinking I'm still a functioning human being, that's just if I had to give a kind of light, conversational, fun answer. You want to ask me my thoughts on vitamins? I'll tell you, fundamentally, I think a multivitamin should contain key nutrients in forms that your body can actually use to help fill gaps in the diet without any shady extras, without any background actors who are quietly playing craps in the corner of the set. Ritual's delayed release capsule design delivers high quality nutrients, including vitamin D3. That's what I take to make up for that lack of sunlight. Just 2 daily pills. And Ritual is made traceable. There's a trademark symbol at the end of traceable. Apparently, Ritual now owns the word traceable, because you'll always know what nutrients you're taking and where they come from thanks to Ritual's one-of-a-kind, visible supply chain. Elizabeth Moss has no reason to be afraid of this supply chain. And it's available for women, for men, for teens. Ritual multivitamins are scientifically developed to help support different life stages, and they're delivered to your door every month with free shipping. Always. You can start, snooze, or cancel your subscription anytime. Love that they put it in the terms of an alarm clock. Definitely not a thing that immediately stresses me out to think about. And if you don't love Ritual within your first month, they'll refund your first order. So what you got to lose, okay? If you want to get key nutrients without the BS, Ritual is offering my listeners, I don't want David taking credit for this, my listeners 10% off during your first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/blank check to start your Ritual today. It's ritual.com/blank check today.
You talk about them being the complications, or the thing that's, trying to stop the main guy from having his fun, right? But you could almost look at the film, and I imagine we'll talk about this more, and obviously you two will talk about it more less than me, but it's a film so much about Jewish identity, especially compared with white American identity, or more traditional white American identity. And the idea that Grodin his character is trying to constantly, with his fast-paced lies, and he's trying to do that type of movie. He's trying to turn it into just a screwball thing so he can get away with his caper. And the humanity of Albert and Berlin is resisting that and turning it into that slower movie. If everyone was on Grodin's level, it would be level in terms of speed of delivery, and with the heaviness that the character is treating the circumstance, it would be just back and forth.
But that's so much of it is just that this movie is resisting Grodin, right?
Yeah.
In every sense, it is resisting becoming the movie that Grodin's character is trying to turn it into.
Even the way he says, when he says, "I'm a newlywed," as if, and just that intonation of, it's one of those situations where you know how it happens, you're a newlywed, and he follows it up with, "I made the big mistake about 5 days ago." And it's just the way he's tossing it off, I know, we've all has this ever happened to you?
What are you going to do? You got married and you fell in love with someone else immediately. I'm sorry.
He truly just wants to blow right past it. And both the movie and the director will not let that lie. No, you can't just forget your wife.
And that's maybe the most masterful scene in the movie, just in terms of it feels like something out of Funny Games. You've just trapped this guy in this 4-shot around the table, watching himself dig himself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And you see on his face that you think he's pulling it off. And you see on the other 3 faces that whenever he stops talking, he's going to get ripped.
But that makes it so funny.
Cybill Shepherd in the background, just not knowing what to do, embarrassed, also slightly hoping he pulls it off. The mom being so sweet and just trying to do that sort of appeasement, make everything nice.
Yeah, sort of brush over everything, yes. I mean, we don't have to talk about the remake much, obviously. But it is telling that in the Farrelly Brothers remake, the Lila character is just a pure evil monster, right?
I was going to say, she's Beetlejuice.
Violent, she's like a drug addict, she's mean, it's just he's got to get rid of this person. This is just awful.
She's a liability, and it's also just that she goes from being overly idealized dream woman in romantic comedy to being she's a convict, and she's a liar, she's violent, and all this sort of shit.
There's a maliciousness to her. She's doing it on purpose.
But even the pitch of the performance is just...
She's the ex from hell.
Right. There's no attempt to make her have any recognizable human behaviors once they get to the resort, right? I mean, it's just like, I mean, this scene where they sleep together for the first time is one of the big, like, Fairly Brother gross out comedic set pieces of the movie, and it's framed around she's so crazy in bed it hurts him.
Right.
Which is just such a bizarre framing of a thing.
I mean, look, we will do the Farrelly Brothers one day.
Yes,
probably.
We must open the book.
But it is, and we should stop talking about the remake because it's irrelevant. It's just sort of the remake is just this interesting text in that it is like, oh, this is such a fundamental misunderstanding, like that it's just sort of crazy that they put it out there, and obviously they put it out there, and everyone was like, no, and it made no money, and that was that. And that's not actually true. It actually made some money, but it
underperformed. It was not. Yes.
But like just for them to think like, let's pay homage to this sort of iconic comedy and these two iconic comedy figures in Neil Simon and Elaine May, with just like, what if the Heartbreak Kid, except it was like the Jeannie Berlin character was a gross out comedy. Like anyway, we don't have to talk about it anymore.
Well, and they think they're doing this. No, I want to say two things about it very quickly.
Yes, go ahead.
They think they're doing this progressive thing circa 2007, where it's like, but look, his wife is more of the shishka.
Yes, that's the thing they think is clever, that it's like
and Michelle Moynihan is like sort of this tomboy, earthy brunette lady.
Sure, she's a freckle.
Neither of
face.
them are Jewish.
We
but,
cannot deny.
Right. That's the one thing they think they're doing. So they're like, I don't know, but the one he's with at the beginning looks more like a Maxim magazine bombshell. So it's not that thing. The other thing is, I think it runs into the exact same problem that Neil Simon ran into trying to do this material again, which is, in both cases, the Farrelly brothers and Neil Simon are like, it doesn't need to be as caustic as what Elaine May did. I want this guy to be likable. And what Elaine May recognized to some degree is, this guy is not likable. No. The entire comedic premise of this movie is bad. It looks bad for him. So either you can make a movie about the fact that he's bad, or you can fail making a movie about a guy you want the audience to like. He's never going to be low status, you know?
He does one almost noble thing in the movie, which is when he, drops the bomb and breaks up with her, he agrees to give her this great, enormous settlement. And then almost immediately when he meets with the lawyer and the lawyer says, I could have got you a better deal, he says, no, don't do that. I mean, if you want to talk to her, if she's willing to talk, see what you can do. Like, there's this one moment where you think, well, at least he did that, and no, he's willing to.
This is my mistake, and I need to pay for it. And you're like, wow, that's surprisingly mature from this guy.
And then he's like, do I need to pay for it, though?
Right.
Do I need to pay for it that much?
Oh my God! Yes, I mean, I love it. To be clear, that scene just. Every time she pulls off that little like knife twist, which she does many times in this movie, it makes me like cackle. Like I know that's what she wants me to do, but it is also like that's sort of the perverse joy of an Elaine May comedy.
But it's such a key Elaine May thing. I just think she has an equal amount of adoration and absolute disdain for every human being, right? I feel like Elaine May, fundamentally, her whole kind of comedic view of the world is she is just a violently unsentimental person, right? She's able to sort of recognize the best and worst qualities of people and be charmed by who people are in their totality without ever feeling like she's endorsing them or condemning them, right? And I think this movie was very revolutionary. I think her whole career is, but this movie in particular, I think is somewhat of a turning point in the sensibility of American comedies in that kind of way of letting behavior get messier, and also how you shoot and edit performances, and not needing to be rat-a-tat-tat, tight, clean audience allegiance, sort of clearly defined lines kind of way, but it is that thing of just like, it wouldn't work if she fully hated the guy, but it also wouldn't work if she thought he was charming,
Right.
And
I mean, I'm sure you'll get to this maybe more in the Mikey and Nikki episode, but that was inspired by, she supposedly grew up around mob connected people and saw some pretty like horrible people in formative years of her life. So like, yeah, she must have had to, if they were close relatives or, part of the family in some way, you have to learn to see
What's appealing, what's
humanity
charming.
in some horrible people. Yeah.
I also think she just is one of those people who is just finds human behavior very fascinating. Like, it is very fascinating that this person can also do this, that they can have these two contradictory traits, you know?
She's right to like she's not judgmental in the way a Hollywood comedy would normally be, but in that a Hollywood comedy usually needs to make a judgment about a character fairly quickly so that the audience is like, okay, I get it. This is the scold. This is the weirdo. This is the oddball. You know, like, I get where you're putting this person in the comic like environment, and then laughs will follow. And she's just like letting the behavior speak for itself, and it's there's nothing like this movie and her other movie. There's really it's inimitable. Like, I'm trying to think, like, because like what is like this now, Griffin? It's like the Safdie brothers or whatever. It's this thing where it's sort of like the sort of painful, like, you kind of feel for the person, but you're also kind of churning, and you feel kind of insane. You just sort of feel like, you know, like, am I watching something that isn't real?
The Safdies have cited her as an influence, right?
Right.
I mean, it makes perfect
the long
sense.
dialogue and the, you know, right. Yeah.
But I also just think, like, yes, in comedy, no one really has the guts to go this hard, right? I mean, to keep you in these pressure cooker situations like this, to really funnel into the best and worst qualities of every character. I think she is kind of a one-off. People took a lot of elements of what she did, but no one really has the courage to go full tilt and present it as a straight comedy, you know?
Yes.
Not a thriller with comedic elements or something like that. It's as you said, it's like there are movies like, you know, Uncut Gems or Goodfellas, or, you know, any of these filmmakers like Scorsese and the Safdies who use a lot of comedy in their films but are not thought of as comedic directors. I think these are all people who cite her movies a lot, but still they're like, I'm putting those sensibilities into a crime movie or an action movie or a horror film or whatever it is, to present it as like, here's a romantic comedy, and then have unbroken 4-minute takes where you just watch a man destroy his standing in the eyes of everyone else on camera.
It's just,
you know,
as you're saying, for, you know, and as you're sort of the article you're citing is saying, like, 99 people would just be like, he has to do it. They would be selling you on, like, he's so in love, you're gonna be so in love, it's a whirlwind, it's crazy, of course, it's a, you know, but like, he just has to do this, and you understand. And in this, when I'm watching this, I'm like, he doesn't have to do this.
No.
Like, and I have like my hands over my mouth, and that's 10 times funnier.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I mean, with talking about how much this film, I think, has to do with the Jewish identity in the 70s. I mean, I watched last night the American Masters that Elaine May directed on Mike Nichols, which I think was a year or two after he passed. And people were asking if we were going to do that as a bonus episode. It's not bonus episode material. The thing is weird. It's weird.
It's all about Mike Nichols. Like, it would just sort of be odd to try and like delve in. Anyway, go on.
It's also like 80% all clips from one interview that Mike Nichols did, like one long form interview. It's really letting him in his own words tell his story.
I think maybe the most interesting thing about that documentary is the idea and the fact that, yeah, she finally got let out of, you know, movie jail, to whatever extent that she was in it by choice or, you know, because of the industry. And the reason was to do, you know, a loving obituary of the male partner. You know, like, that's basically what you need to talk about with that, I think.
Well, and what I was going to say is really interesting about to me as well is the section where he's talking about his relationship with her and their breakup and how they didn't really speak for 10 years and all that sort of stuff. It's very fascinating to think of the choices she's making in terms of which clips to include and to not sort of let herself off the hook on that. Here's an interview that he conducted with someone else years earlier. Now she's in an editing booth deciding which words to pass along as sort of like his obituary. But he talks about the fact that, you know, They go from being Compass players to, becoming national TV stars, doing all these commercials, going on Broadway, and they do this Broadway run that's just a blockbuster. I mean, Mike Nichols says, like, it is the only time in my life I have ever been part of anything that everybody liked. It was bizarre and it was eerie. We never got a bad review. We never got a bad comment. It was everyone agreed that what we were doing was funny, and we didn't understand why people were so impressed with it. That they very much had this attitude of, these are the dumb skits that we were doing in a bar for 5 people for years. I don't understand why people like them now. We find them somewhat charming, but why is everyone reacting this strongly? And Nichols' attitude to that was, this is amazing. I have it made. I have to work 2 hours a night. I do these things with my best friend that I've done for years. I'm famous. Girls like me. I'm rich. And Elaine May was like, I hate this. I want out.
She was right? Like, because
she was
instead of them being the comedy double act that toured for years, and that was their thing, and eventually they got a little like new comedy emerged that they could not keep up with, or what, they went out of fashion. They went out on top, kings, as you say, basically no bad reviews. They basically invented an art form. And then he was like, oh, God, I feel like a piece of me is lost. I guess I'll be an acclaimed filmmaker who works for generations. And she's like, obviously does not have his like soaring like chain, but also like they just go off and do incredible things separately.
Well, it's so
and then
funny
late in life they get back together. They do a couple great movies.
Yeah. It's just funny to me because, I mean, she's so much more press shy than he is, right? And she's sort of so unsentimental that even something like this Ishtar Q&A, which is one of her rare times doing a public appearance and talk about her work, she gave so many monosyllabic answers, right? Like, she's not nostalgic. She doesn't want to look back at her accomplishments, saying this sort of stuff. And Nichols is, more conventional for someone with his level of success, of being open to talk about all of his accomplishments and failures and what have you. But he really talks about, as you were joking, David, like him saying, what am I going to do? I'll become an acclaimed director. But he really was like, I was out for 6 years. Like, I was a mess. It was like the worst breakup of my life.
Right. It fucked him up.
She couldn't explain to me why she was ending this thing. I resented it. I didn't know what to do in my career. I only stumbled upon the directing thing a couple years later, and it was a godsend. And she didn't really have a reason she was breaking it up other than, I'm tired of doing something I know we can do.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, we've done this. What more is there?
We've done this.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense.
Right. She married a guy. He felt very betrayed. They ended their relationship, and she just kind of went on the down low for a while. And he, starts building up his reputation as this big director. But very much it feels like New Leaf was kind of people saying, like, Elaine May, shouldn't you make a movie by now? I mean, she had a lot of free reign, even if they ended up pushing back more in the cut. But it was very much a thing where people are like, you should be a filmmaker, right? You're like this defining comedic voice.
No, but it's not just that. It's like, she's like, I guess, okay, all right, I'll make a movie. Who should be in it, though? And they're like, you should be in it, you maniac. Like, well, you're the star.
Right. She was like, I don't want to be in it. And they're like, we won't make it unless you're in it. You're a star.
Elaine May. That's the whole fucking idea.
Right, so then you get to this movie, and it's like Neil Simon, who's one of like the most successful humorists in America, is like, Elaine May should direct my script, right? She should be the one to do this, and she comes on and says like, well, but I know you're so particular, and you put it in your contracts that you can't change a word. My whole background is improv. I have a different sensibility. I want to do it my way. Can I shoot every scene 2 ways? Can I shoot every scene word perfect as you wrote, and then once we have a good take of that, we'll do a run of it where I get to have the cast improv as they like.
Basically inventing the Judd Apatow method of filmmaking.
Yes, right. And she essentially said, I'll do 2 complete cuts of the movie. We'll screen both of them and we'll see which one's better. And what happened was he agreed to that. She started doing it that way. And then when he stopped showing up to set, she just stopped shooting the Neil Simon
the boring
takes.
one, the California Suite version, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. What a legend. But he was picky and fussy about lines being changed, right? Like I feel like I was reading about that he was doing his usual sort of persnickety, like, I'm Neil Simon.
He talked about this movie less than any other adaptation in his entire career.
Because it's not his.
It's an Elaine May film.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny because it's a good script,
Yeah.
if it's a script, which I think a lot of it is, and it has very funny. Neil Simon is like one of the most. He has aged worse than almost any generational figure, right? Like, because we're talking about a generational figure. It's not just that he was successful. Yes, right.
No,
but like a name brand onto himself,
right?
And
it was almost a Neil Simon above a title was like Marvel Studios. I mean, it was just like, right, this is home based. I know the types of actors who are in this, the types of directors. This is comfort food.
It's going to be shot in Georgia.
If it's not a big warehouse,
parking lot,
the action is going to be rote, okay? But everything else, no, I mean,
they always have second unit do those scenes,
right?
But, yeah.
But if you,
he was like a franchise, right?
Yes,
I mean, he really
if it's not in movie theaters, which it usually was every year, go to Broadway. He's got something on Broadway. Maybe he has a TV show going. Maybe like he's got a new book out. Like, and it's always this. Anytime I watch a Neil Simon thing, or more, you're kind of like, oh, like it's that kind of a reaction usually. You're like,
sure,
yeah, like. There is a cost. It's how much do you dial into the causticness? Like the Out of Towners, which I guess is one of the most iconic Neil Simon movies. Have you seen the Out of Towners, Griffin? I'm assuming. Yes. It's to me like it's only really funny if you're like, oh, this movie hates these people. I'm watching a movie punish people, and like. I'm not sure that's what that movie thinks. Like, and that's sort of the weird balance with him. Like, I'm like, does he just hate these people, or is this just like a gentle comedy of manners?
Well, look, this is the other thing, right? Neil Simon falls into that tradition of the Jew who wants to be accepted by the goys, right?
Yes.
There is a packaging of the Jewish mentality and the Jewish humor into a mode that is understandable to outside audiences. Is like, oh, that the Jew thing. But in a very, very cute way. I mean, if you look at the 60s and 70s are when like the Jewish sensibilities in comedy really start to come to the forefront. And you don't just have Jewish comedians who change their names and then work the Borscht Belt and now just do sort of like rote sort of routines. You really have movies that are about the Jewish identity, right? And our place in American culture at large and all that sort of stuff. But, the Woody Allen of it all is both like more caustic and more please love me. This is about me. This isn't about Jews. This is about me.
Sure. It's more egocentric.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And the Neil Simon thing is just like, look, we're pretty wacky. Like, it's like this, like, whether it's the whole thing's about a family, whether it's about just the one character who's the odd duck out, it's like, what can you say?
We're smart, Alex.
To the extent maybe that if it wasn't a Jewish creative team every step of the way behind this film, the Charles Grodin character would possibly be a horrible anti-Semitic caricature.
Yes,
absolutely. He's like a wife thief who's trying to pick off this blonde college student. I mean, that's the thing. You could present it as this, like, what can he do? The winds of love blow him in this direction. Or you could be like, this is a movie about a creepy predator who won't leave a woman alone.
Well, that's Elaine May's big takeaway is, no, this is a movie about a guy making a series of choices. I am not going to act like it's like, what can he do? He's stuck. It's like, this is a man who made a series of choices.
Yes. I mean, should we go through the plot, Griffin? Like, I mean, or just scenes that we like, or like, however you want to do it. I mean,
I think we should go through it. But you're right, Avery. This film is unique to have like all the key collaborators are Jewish, right? I mean, to say like Grodin is actually Jewish. It's not a waspy actor playing Jew in a way that would have been horribly offensive, right? It's like a Jewish director adapting a Jewish script that's adapted from a Jewish short story. Even the music is like Burt Bacharach, like a Jew doing pop, right? Doing easy listening. There's something to the authenticity of this, of not packaging the sort of the waspy perception of Jewishness for comedy, and really kind of funneling into the fundamental thing, which is just a people raised in a culture of grief and misery and worry, right?
I mean, at the time, like you read the reviews of like people were like, is this movie anti-Semitic because of the Jeannie Berlin character? But it's that classic thing of like where they're like, I don't get it, this is too searing, like surely this is just a caricature and I should be offended, because they're like, you know, she's the kvetchy Jew and he ends up with the shiksa, you know, like isn't there something terrible going on here? Shouldn't I be outraged about this? And like it's that sort of surface reading of it that is, I would say, off the mark.
But there's that key line for me. It's in one of the scenes where he just said, like, my entire life, I thought someday I was going to end up in a place like this with a girl like you, you know? and what he's saying is, I thought someday I'd be able to jump out of my, like, class sphere. I'd be able to be accepted by the goys. I can be one of the rich, beautiful, shiny people. I
was reading a review on Letterboxd of A New Leaf where I think it was maybe Brad Pitt's review, saying that A New Leaf is as close as America can get to doing a British-style class comedy, and
that's a good take. Yeah,
and there's a similar thing with this movie. Like, yeah, it's about, and again, I say this as a non-Jewish person, but obviously I have absorbed a lot of American culture, and there's a lot of Jewishness in that, and I also lived. One of my partners that I was with for a long time is Jewish, and I lived with her family for a number of years. And I had blonde hair at the time, so I was her shiksa, and was honored to be. But a transgender shiksa, so you know, I played with the form. But it's that there's the whole movie is this Jewish guy who even like his last name versus Lila's last name, like he's Cantro and she's, I think, like Kolodny, something like that. Like even his name is slightly closer to
right. But Lila Kolodny is Jeannie Berlin, right?
And it's like
her name. It's sort of like oh boy, Ellis Island didn't want to work on that one.
the whole movie, he's striving towards this non-Jewish version of whiteness in America, and especially the scenes in Minnesota where you see him like paired up against these like Viking people. But like if you watch the two weddings, that first traditional Jewish wedding is so joyous. Like both the event itself and even him, he's happy. In the moments when he's traveling with Lila in the car and at the hotel and stuff, when he's not getting annoyed by her and taking himself out of the moment, he's happy with her, and which is not to say that I think Jews should stay in their place and not strike. You know, I don't think the movie's saying that. I think that it's saying in this specific instance, his particular striving out of that class and out of that cultural background is bad for him as well as bad for the people around him.
And I do think that's part of the Neil Simon more bottle pitch of it, is like, what would the moral of the story be? You know, he ends up at a dinner party where he's surrounded by wasps who are like chatting about the weather, and he's in hell. Like, I think that is Neil Simon's big joke, right? Or it's like, you know, you want the nice Midwestern blonde lady. Yeah, well, okay, now you married her. Now what? You're going to sell, like, you know, insurance?
They're wasps, and they're particularly evil. Like, one of them sells insurance, but then one of them appears to be a tear gas manufacturer, which is one of my favorite lines. Just Charles Grodin. Well, you know, there's a lot of money in tear gas. Another guy makes food to feed veal calves. Like, it's just this sort of like banal evil that he's entered himself into.
But as you said, it's like you see his moments of frustration, but also his moments of pure happiness.
Look at his face. Just look at it.
The best.
His fucking face.
Until the moment that Cybill Shepherd steps in front of him, and then he's ruined. And it is just, from that moment on, he becomes fixated on the idea of, could I pull it off? Right? Essentially,
that's the whole
he
thing.
becomes fixated on, could I pass? Could I assimilate into that culture? Could I have that type of wife, that type of family, go to those types of parties? Could I fit in and wear it comfortably?
And also, my wife is 21. This girl is 20. She's got to be so much newer and fresher.
I know the reveal of Jeannie Berlin only being 22 is so huge because you're just like,
she's not even 22 yet. She's going to be
she's
22
about to turn
in 12
right.
weeks.
But I'm like, this fucker's trying to shave 3 years off the model.
but that's he only gets married as far as I'm interpreting these early scenes because he wants to have sex because it's 1972.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And she's like, we should wait. Right. You know, like, so that's why he gets married.
It's also an absolute masterstroke on May's part that just there's almost no dialogue. They're married in like 3 minutes of the movie. It's like a look across a bar. It cuts to them spending a little time together under music. Then they're in bed and she goes, not until I'm married, and they're at the wedding. In a way, it's so much better than doing the fucking Farrelly Brothers thing where you show someone who's really nice and then who suddenly, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, becomes a monster. You're just only seeing his sort of horniness driving his perception of her, jumping so fast in time until they're at the wedding that he's not even really noticing who this person is. It's not that she revealed herself to be someone different. It's like he wasn't even paying attention. Things happen so fast. And the audience doesn't get the chance to really see who either of them are.
There is, when they're doing that quick courtship, there's like a vignette of them at dinner, and she's like laughing too hard, and there's a second in which it annoys him, and then he almost like shakes it off and then joins in laughing with her. And it's like, I guess you could read it either as him shaking off, like, don't be annoyed at this, just be like a normal person and find joy. Or it's him kidding himself and being like, no, you like this person, you're having fun, because he wants to have sex with her.
Right. Yeah, and it's also the just like, I guess if that's the one thing.
Yeah.
And he's resigned to his lot, as you're saying, Griffin, where it's just like, yeah, fine. Right. You know, this is what you do. You go on honeymoon in Miami. Okay.
You sell baseball bats. Yeah.
And then when Cybill Shepherd razzes him, essentially, does like a little flirt, as you're in my spot, he's just immediately like his whole, like there's just a crack in the foundation of his, you know, and he's just like, well, wait a second. Like, I can get out of here. Like, is that an option?
Wait
for
a
me?
second. Am I allowed to be in a Neil Simon play? Like, can I be the lead of Barefoot in the Park?
I mean, she appears in front of the sun, like it's like a halo around her. He can't see her because of obviously she's just silhouetted, and she looks like an angel.
Right.
Yes. This is her second movie. I mean, she's only been in The Last Picture Show, which she's, she was this like beautiful ingenue, like that. She's still right in that zone.
Bogdanovich discovers her on a magazine cover in a supermarket. She's never acted before. He puts her in the movie and eventually, of course, leaves his wife and key collaborator for her. So there's also this, like, I guess, has that become public at the time that this movie comes out? I mean, there's just an interesting mirroring of Cybill Shepherd also being a real-life Shishka who pulled a Jewish director who always tried to model himself as more of a WASP away from his wife.
Wow.
I'm trying to see when it was official that I don't know, though. I'd have to. I mean, and obviously there's much that's been written on Peter Bogdanovich and
yes.
What you must remember this just had the whole miniseries about it and all that, but
my point is just,
yes, go ahead.
It is fascinating that Cybill Shepherd holds a similar role in culture in the 70s as she does in this movie.
I mean, she's our culture like acknowledged that she's hot enough and gorgeous enough, and that smile is dazzling enough that you'll try to assassinate a political figure for her. You'll leave your wife for her, and if you're Bruce Willis, you'll wear a toupee for her.
Oh,
you know, you'll do crazy things if you're a man and Cybill Shepherd smiles at you.
Should I go on a Cybill run?
Maybe.
Should I watch Moonlighting and rewatch Cybill?
I've just started watching her sitcom.
It's the best. I mean, I loved it when I was a kid.
It's free on Vudu.
Ooh.
It's weird that it's not on CBS All Access, and I wonder if that's... She said recently that the show was cancelled because Les Moonves made moves towards her and she shut him down, and so they cancelled the show even though it was successful. And I wonder if even like with him gone, there's some lingering like stuff at play. I don't know.
I will say this though, Avery.
Theory.
I'm always willing to chalk anything up to Les Moonves being a piece of shit. But I will additionally say as someone who's been in a big sitcom hole for like the last 2 years, the CBS sitcoms are weirdly the ones that are the hardest to track down by and large. I think there's just some weird, complicated rights things with a lot of those shows because a lot of them are just like they should be on somewhere, least of which should be CBS All Access.
Well, you can watch it on Vudu, free with ads.
I think CBS did not make it. Maybe the Chuck, that's a Chuck Lorre show, and he does have his own sort of mini empire onto himself. Look, how is it, Avery? How does it hold up? Because when I was a kid, I watched Cybill and loved it. I was like, I love these, 40-something ladies who like drink cocktails, and I had the biggest crush on Alicia Witt. Just staggering crush.
Of course.
Just the mean, sarcastic, like what was she? A piano genius who never wants to have sex or whatever. Like the coolest character in the universe.
I mean, there's some stuff. There's some stuff that's tricky. Like in the first episode, Alicia Witt says if her mother doesn't stop interfering in her sex life, she'll become a lesbian, and it's like it's a threat.
Hey, Chuck Lorre, baby.
Yeah, obviously there's some stuff that's not great, but yeah, it's fantastic. You've got Christine Baranski, doing amazing work.
I'm surprised to use the term lesbian because obviously in the Chuck Lorre universe, he also the lesbian is synonymous with a half man.
Yeah.
Remember in the end of 2.5 Men when the kid left, the little boy left, and they went, how do we fill this gap? There's a half man in the title. And so they added Amber Tamblyn as a lesbian. I swear to God, I swear to you, that's what they did.
I believe you. Season 11 here.
Yeah.
Remember when 2.5 Men just kept going? They just threw in Kutcher. He was just like a guy.
The premise of the show was uptight dude and his son have their life crashed by reckless playboy brother. Right. And by the 11th season, it was uptight guy whose son has abandoned him to become a missionary and whose brother has been killed by a falling piano, lives with an oversexed tech billionaire who bought his house but let the guy move back in because he feels bad for him. And then his brother's long lost, estranged lesbian daughter who he never met before.
Yes. And then in the last season, they adopted a boy. Did you know that?
No.
They adopt a 6-year-old. I think because maybe CBS is just
so now it's 3 full men?
Right. Like, we need some juice. This show needs a kid again. They could just have a kid again, right? And they're like, yeah, sure, fine. He adopts
3
a kid.
men.
I don't know.
I didn't realize that Audra Lindsay was Cybill's mom on the Cybill sitcom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who is her mother in this as well, which is cool.
And look, I'm gonna rewatch Cybill. Okay, I'm gonna fucking do it.
It's 4 seasons. It ends on a cliffhanger. So be wary of that.
Is she gonna get with Ira? I remember Ira.
No, it's can I
Please,
spoil it? It's
ahead.
a funny
Ira is her ex, right? That's
right.
who Ira is. Yes, right.
No, the cliffhanger is she and Christine Baranski get arrested for murdering Christine Baranski's ex-husband.
What?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
They gotta bring Christine Baranski's star has never been more powerful. Why doesn't she just be like, we're doing it, guys. We're bringing Cybill back. It'll be on CBS All Access. Why not?
That was also the other rumor about Cybill always was that it was like such a big, like, concerted effort to relaunch Cybill Shepherd's career.
Right.
And then Baranski just was the breakout, is the one who wins the Emmys, became the breakout star, and that there was a lot of infighting on the show.
I mean, Cybill has always been tagged as difficult. And of course, we always should take that at face value and ask no more questions. But she's a fascinating, like, beyond just like the stuff she's just a fascinating figure, as you're saying, Griffin.
Yeah.
Like, what she's represented to different eras. And this is her earliest, which is just like bombshell. Your brain will explode, like you were saying, Avery. You'll fucking assassinate the president. You'll shave your head into a mohawk. I guess.
And like Last Picture shows about like these boys punching each other in the face for 2 hours because they all want to fuck her.
Well, I mean, she's very.
And the
charming.
director was like, this is a good idea.
I mean, honestly, watching this movie, I wanted to leave my girlfriend for Cybill Shepherd.
Yeah.
If I could hop in a time machine and give it a shot, I would.
It's also just such a, like, I think it's interesting that she chose this. I don't say that in any sort of loaded way, but like Last Picture Show was such a sensation. She was such a breakout that I was having a hard time finding specific examples, but she apparently turned down a lot in order to do this. That this was very deliberately, no, this is what my follow-up is going to be. And it's a movie that's all framed around her, but it's also sort of framed around the mythical idea of what she represents, you know?
She does get to do a lot for such a seemingly shallow character. Like,
right. In the first half, not so much, but then
not so much, yeah.
Right, yeah.
But once you get to Minnesota, I was reminded of the Garfunkel and Oates IFC show.
Sure.
They had an episode where they twigged that guys don't really listen to you, and I wonder how far into a relationship or a date with a dude you could get and not say anything and see like if they would notice and what they would project on you. And there's a similar sort of vibe in the Miami scenes with Kelly.
Right. She's not giving him anything except for a couple little flirts right at the start.
She's pretty much made the same joke twice. You're on my stool, you're in my spot.
Right.
Because she's 20. She's not actually like funny or interesting. She's not lived enough life to have anything to offer a 38-year-old man.
She has poli-sci to get to. You know, she's got to go to school. She's figuring it out.
She's got English lit as well.
She's got English lit.
I mean, and Grodin is 36 when
38.
this movie comes out. He's 38?
Yeah.
You're right. Jesus. Yes, I did my math wrong. He's 38. Right.
Grodin is famously old.
I know. That's the thing with it. You always underestimate how old he is.
He's always older than you think he is. Yes. Because he's now like 85. Like he was born in the 30s. Right.
He's 85. He plays the doctor in Rosemary's Baby, and I remember seeing that and going like, that mathematically doesn't make sense.
Right. This man was in Beethoven, and I swear he was a grown-up then, too. Like, that's the whole thing.
Right, but you're also used to dads in movies like Beethoven being 38.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy that he's the OB in Rosemary's Baby.
So you can say, I mean, he's probably supposed to read a little younger than he actually is in this movie, but still, he's supposed to be firmly a man in his 30s. He has a career, not a job, right?
Bats and balls.
He's got some bats and balls.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that Ishtar does in its own weird way, where it's just like she's really good in just establishing a lot very quickly through a lot of shorthand, you know? So you don't have to spend the 30 minutes waiting to get to the actual movie. You know, you can just dive into the characters through a lot of just kind of keenly observed behavior. But yes, I mean, the point with Cybill Shepherd is it comes under 15 minutes into the movie, right?
22.
22. Okay.
I wrote it down. I took notes.
Yeah.
I was so excited to be on this podcast.
So you essentially have like 10 minutes of like, you know, setup, 10 minutes of her starting to annoy him. Right? And then the shishka comes in.
Shiksa. It's
Shiksa.
incredible.
I keep saying it wrong.
I know. I have no. I've just been. I've been really enjoying. You've said it in different ways, and it's really fun.
Your restraint. I appreciate your restraint.
I didn't want to jump in and correct because I didn't feel it was my place.
I mostly just kind of let it ride, but I mean it's fun.
David, I'm gonna do another ad read because we have multiple sponsors this episode. It's another solo ad read. This is another solo ad read. Bombas makes the most comfortable socks in the history of feet. Fact. End of story. That could be the end of the ad read, but I mean, technically they pay us to talk for longer than this. They've literally rethought every little detail of the socks we wear to make them way more comfortable. Do I wear them every day? No, I don't, because I'm dumb. I have a couple pairs of Bombas, and what that does is it throws off the rest of my week. Because I'll run through my Bombas, they're first up when I do my laundry, and then the rest of the week I'm stuck wearing these sandpaper socks. That's what they feel like now that I've had Bombas around my toesies. They feel like sandpaper socks. So I need to get some more Bombas. That's what I need to do. Not just because I want my feet to be more comfortable, but because Bombas helps give back to the most vulnerable members of our community. I know this is a difficult time. A lot of people are struggling. World is terrible. It's bad. Everything is awful. And many of our listeners probably, struggling financially, out of work, You want to give back, but you maybe don't have the resources to do so. You're trying to just take care of yourself on a basic day-to-day level, perhaps. Well, Bombas has a little program where every pair of socks you purchase, they donate a pair to someone in need. That's it. That's it right there. It's done. It's that simple. And the generosity of Bombas customers has allowed them to donate over 40 million pairs of socks and counting through their nationwide network of 3,000 plus giving partners. That's at least 3,001. And the impact is more powerful than ever because to those experiencing homelessness, these socks represent the dignity of putting on clean clothes, a small comfort that's especially important right now. I think we could all use any conceivable comfort we could find. So here's the deal. When you buy a pair, they give a pair, and you could get 20% off your first purchase at bombas.com/check. That's 20% off the socks that you're going to get and 20% off the socks that are going to be given to someone else. That's bombas.com/check for 20% off your first purchase. bombas.com/check. And I also feel compelled to mention that Bombas was, of course, on Shark Tank. They made a deal with Damon John. They are currently, I believe, still the most successful product in the history of Shark Tank.
Jeannie Berlin, she's just emotionally immature, right? Like that's really the big diagnosis there. It's not like she's not a monster. She doesn't want to, pee on him as Malin Ackerman does in the Heartbreak Kid. Like she doesn't want to break his dick off or during sex or whatever. She's just like, she needs some constant affirmation. She's just kind of annoying. Like that's her worst flaw.
But also like she's immature, but also she can sense that he's not into it, and she's trying her best with the tools she has available to make the relationship fun again.
Right, she's drawing the circles on his chest. He says, I really don't like that. And she goes, okay, I'll do squares instead.
It's a good line.
Right, as opposed to it being revealed that, like, the wife is actually a secret, like, recovering meth addict who, like, performed highway robbery or whatever. Like, it's just so much more interesting this way. I mean, and her calling it pee-pee, I need to go pee-pee. Like, it's all these little things. I think to some degree it almost works metaphorically for, as an adult when you have to reckon with after you've slept with someone and now there's a certain level of mystique that is gone, right? There's always that thing where like this person exists as this like, oh my God. And then you get to the other end of it and you're like, the most vulnerable thing in the world has just happened. The most revealing thing in the world has just happened. And suddenly you're an actual human being, I
mean, that mystique thing, like there's a scene where they're getting ready to go out to the pool and she's teasing her hair, trying to get it to look right. And he's just looking at her like, what are you doing? This is insane. And it's like, when you're married to a person, you see all the things that they have to do to maintain the image that you were attracted to.
Right.
And it can ruin it, sure.
Yeah, and being an adult is learning to like appreciate that person as a full real person.
Yeah.
But he's a guy who is just constantly obsessed with the idea of what if I could have this kind of life, this kind of person, this kind of this. And so when she meets him, it's done for, right? She comes back, says, who are you talking to? He says, nobody, right?
Oh, these scenes are so tough. That's where I was thinking of like the Safdies or whatever. Like the slightly, every time he's essentially finding ways to keep her quarantined while he explains why he has to go out or why the dinner reservation is at 9.
The best thing I could do for you is leave you alone.
Just crawling in my skin.
That's what I was going to say. It's like another wild thing about this movie is like, I feel like anytime we talk about like studio comedies, I talk about my frustration with movies where just like characters don't solve things quick enough, where dilemmas go on for too long, where lies are maintained for too long. And it's because they don't want to resolve the conflict of the movie. But instead you get into this thing where you're just like, this strains credibility. How can they still be caught up on this? And it's like, okay, so the suntan thing happens, right? He's telling her to put on the sunscreen.
She has to stay in for a day. Yes.
Right. So I was going like, is this movie really going to have it be like 8 days of her being so sunburnt? And instead, it's just like, no. He realizes the sunburn pass is fading. So he starts making just such there was no need for his lies to be this big, right?
Yeah. And his instinct at every turn in this movie, when confronted with a problem, is to lie.
He triples down.
And always with a very big lie.
He never is like, tries to sort of dodge, or he just like runs straight at it, which is why the Eddie Albert scenes are so incredible, because Eddie Albert's like, I hate you and won't stand to talk to you.
I see like, what you are.
Yeah,
right. But they're just these colossal, unsustainable lies. You know, I just love that the movie doesn't give him the out of like, he comes up with a little fib and then he gets caught. It's like, no, he somehow keeps getting away with it. But how?
Well, because, I mean, there's the moment where he's saying, you know, I was in this horrible car wreck. And Jean just looks at him and says, were you really in a car wreck, Lenny?
Yeah.
This is the scene that murders me. Right.
It is, to borrow from the title, it's heartbreaking. Because to even, if you love someone, to even get to a place where you have to ask that of them, either you think they're lying to you or you suspect they're lying to you and you think you're about to do a horrible insult to them to ask them that. She's dealing with so much, and you can see it all in her face and the line reading and the time that's taken on that. And then, immediately he quadruples down and says, call the patrolman that pulled me out of the car.
He picks up the phone. The way he uses his military service as a card anytime he can.
But it's also like it's one of those moments where he takes a classic Charles Grodin pause. And you look at him when she says, did you really get in a car crash? He looks at her for a little while before he starts going, are you questioning me? And you see in his eyes that he's like, I could be honest at this moment, or I could triple down again.
Yeah.
You see him doing the math.
God, he's so good.
He's so good.
He's the fucking king. I love him so much. He never, I guess, all right, okay. Can we talk about him for a second?
Let's do a little Grodin career corner.
Because he's barely been in anything before this. He has a small role in Catch-22, which is a Mike Nichols movie. Maybe that is how Elaine May notices it. You know, no idea. You know, as you say, he has a small role in Rosemary's Baby. After this, he writes a movie called 11 Harrow House that he's in, never seen, which I think is like a sort of like funny thriller. It's like a... Okay. They're all in a house full of traps, and it's got Candice Bergen and James Mason. Honestly, it sounds pretty fucking good.
That sounds rad as hell.
Yeah, and then he's in the King Kong remake. He's like the second lead of that. He's kind of the Jack Black, right?
Exactly. Yes. He's the mogul. Yeah.
Right, and then I mean, I guess he's in that Marlo Thomas movie Thieves. He's in. Something called Just Me and You with Louise Lasser. But I feel like then he's just like, once he's in Heaven Can Wait, which Elaine May writes, obviously, for Warren Beatty, which he's hysterical in. Like, that's just a top drawer comedy supporting performance. That's when he's just like, oh, yeah, this is what I should do. I'll just do this. Like, Real Life. I mean, oh, God, he's so funny in Real Life.
Ishtar, He's got that small role.
Oh, Ishtar is incredible in.
Yes.
Yeah, he's so good in Ishtar. But I think to some degree that was not by choice. I mean, I remember a couple of stories about Charles Grodin that are seared my head.
There's a few sort of basically bombs in a row here.
Right. I know he was like an acting school classmate of Gene Wilder. And there's the story that Gene Wilder always tells where they would sit around and talk about their dreams for their careers, wanting to be leading men. And Charles Grodin just said to him in his very Grodin way, like, you imagine it was with the tone of one of his Letterman performances where he's like, Gene, come on, you're not going to be a movie star.
Right.
And he was like, what? And he was like, look, I mean, come on, you're a great actor, but look at you. I mean, you can't hide the Jew on your face. Look at that hair. Your name's Gene Wilder. It's not going to happen, Gene. I mean, I could pass. You know, I'm a Jew, but I could pass, right? Which is so much of his persona to begin with. But he very much was like, I think I'm passing enough to be able to work as a mainstream comedy leading man. I'm conventionally handsome enough, all that sort of stuff. And then I think he was very kind of quickly tagged with, that guy doesn't have the box office juice. He's a little too caustic. He's not charming. He's never going to cross over. But what happens is a lot of people like Warren Beatty are like, that guy's the funniest guy in the world.
But and he's funny as a stiff. Like this, I can cast this guy as an uptight square, and it's gonna murder. Like it's gonna be so good.
So the people who have good taste, like Albert Brooks and Warren Beatty, you know,
the Muppets,
they all go like, right, please, Grodin, come in here. Play the heavy, play the asshole, play the deadpan best friend. Come in and be the fourth or fifth lead. Just give us your funny. And he sort of coasts on that for a while of just like, his standing is so good with so many of the most important people in Hollywood that he's never lacking for work, but it feels like he has a little bit of resentment of the fact that he never became the guy, right? And he's like, oh, he's playing the part in the Steve Martin movie. He's playing the part in the Gene Wilder movie, right? I mean, it's always sort of like Incredible Shrinking Woman. It's all these people like Lily Tomlin who are like, right, keeping him in rotation. And then Midnight Run happens. And Midnight Run is like, you hear all these stories about just, they wanted anyone but him. It was, De Niro was the one who suggested it to Brest and was like, that's the funniest guy in the world. This would be funniest with Grodin, and Brest agreed. And they just fought for it so hard. They wanted Robin Williams. They wanted Cher. I mean, if you read the 20 people they wanted for that part instead, and they just kept doubling down until finally they were just like, fuck it, cast Charles Grodin, see if we give a shit.
These things go down. They go down. That's my favorite line reading.
The best.
Yes, he's the best. I want to watch that movie right now.
I
just
watch
thinking
it 2
about
times
it.
a year.
Yeah.
But then it's right. Like that happens in 1988, right? Then in the years in between that, he does Cranium Command, which is a Disney World ride. He does Taking Care of Business, which is a fucking Belushi, a James Belushi vehicle.
Second build to Jim Belushi. No offense, but yeesh.
And then he does Beethoven. And now it's like for the first time, he's like the single name above the title. It's a big hit. He has cachet, and he's like, I guess this is who I am. I'm a fucking dog movie guy. And he cashes out on that.
For a couple years, for not that long.
And then
he's like, fuck it, I'm out.
And then fucking is just like, right, I'm going to get really into like law and hosting a late night news show. I mean, do you remember that he had like a CNN show?
No, it was on the CNBC. And he was he was like tagging in on 60 Minutes 2, which was like the like side series to 60 Minutes where they put the stuff that couldn't make the main show or whatever.
And he was like, movies are bullshit. I'm going to be all about prison reform.
And then like he just kind of like came back recently, and it's like, oh, he's still great. He's still so funny.
Yes.
Even though, I mean, like some of the stuff, like in The Comedian, he plays like Chevy Chase. Have you seen the great film The Comedian?
No.
Like he's like the preening asshole comedian who's a big star and like wants everyone to kiss the ring. That movie stinks. He's really good in it.
He's always good. He's so good in While We're Young.
While We're Young, he's incredible in that.
Where he's like essentially playing Wiseman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's sort of playing like, or one of the Maisel brothers.
Right, like an old documentary, honcho legend, yes.
But he just didn't act for 12 years and was like, I don't care. I mean, he just has this attitude, but he also talks about it in a way where it feels like he does wish he had gotten to do 10 movies like this, you know?
He's just always good. He's always good.
Always funny.
And if you go through his career, you're like, oh, I forgot there's always something where you're like, I forgot he's in this. He's incredible in Dave.
So
balances the
good
budget.
In Dave. He's uncredited in Dave.
Thank you, Charles. I don't think he's uncredited.
He has that amazing line where he's looking at the books and he says, like, if I did my taxes this way, you'd put me in jail.
Yeah, he's very funny, very deadpan. That scene is the kind of the best scene in Dave, in its whole sort of like fantasy. I love Charles Grodin. I love him in this movie. This movie does not work without him.
Can I say his performance in this movie? There are so many moments where I saw a lot of Jim Carrey in him, if that makes sense. Or I mean, the other way around. Like the way he juts his lower jaw out at times, and like the gesticulating with his arms. And
right,
that scrambling to maintain a lie or something.
And I think there's a certain smarmy arrogance, you know? It's not like so often these types of characters are played by guys who are just so unabashedly charming and cute in their personality that you go like, but I can't hate him. And I feel like Carrie also, like people, when Carrie started making movies, people were like, you can't do this. You can't make a character like Ace Ventura for the entire movie who never resembles a normal human being.
There's no such thing as a pet detective.
Right. But also just like he was so committed to like, I'm just playing an asshole or an idiot. You know, there was no concern for being likable.
He has no vulnerability in terms of that. He's right. He's happy to lay it out. And that's why scenes like him, you know, rushing to pick up the phone to say like, call the patrolman, like work, because he can be a monster in that moment. And that's why scenes like the one that is my background, where he goes to the magic show to try and impress the family, which is just this like mind-bogglingly awkward scene, are just hysterically funny. Like, even as they're so crazily awkward.
It's funny too, like Eddie Albert, entirely deserved Academy Award nomination, essentially has two big dialogue scenes, right? A lot of the movie, he's just kind of sitting there in silence, stewing and glaring at this guy.
He's looking grumpy. Yeah, right. Yes. It's absolutely so fucking good though in those two scenes where he finally uncorks the bottle and is like, let me give you a whiff of this. Just, you really think that there's like water in here and there's sulfuric acid. You're not picking up what I'm putting down, buddy.
But he's also, I mean, you know, the mother is kind of just like clueless, charmed by everything, right? She falls for the sort of performative bullshit that Grodin's putting on. I think Cybill Shepherd just kind of enjoys him like a toy. I mean, it's such a good reveal when he shows up at her college and she's just like, I care more about class than you.
What are you
like,
doing
you
here?
were like an activity on a vacation.
Yeah, you're like a bit I did. Yeah.
Right. But Albert is just staring him down every single moment. And just, you know, he's getting dragged along to all these things. You're wondering why he's tolerating this guy being let into every activity the family goes on.
I mean, he loves his daughter so much, and like I think too much. In the final argument between him and Grodin,
he becomes the sort of protective dad in a kind of annoying, creepy way, right?
And he says, like Grodin says, I just want Kelly. And the dad says, so do I. And, you know, the fact that it cuts to the wedding right after, and you wonder what happened in between that, in that moment, I sort of think, like, is he realizing, like, oh, I'm too attached to her. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to like anyone she gets with. It might as well be this guy.
I mean, like, she wants to marry him. It's like, how much can you, like, you can't lock her in chains, I guess is what but I don't know.
I think the thing with the Eddie Albert character, too, is she's as much of a status symbol for him as she is for Grodin, right? She fits into the dynamic of, look at me, I have the perfect house, I have the perfect daughter, you know?
At the wedding, there's this old guy that comes up to Grodin and says, you're the luckiest man alive. There's, even when she's on college campus, like, random men walking past her are like, hey, Kelly, like, it makes sense because Cybill Shepherd is so luminous in this movie, but, like, yeah, she must... There must just be dozens of men, hundreds of men in her life who all want her. And that reflects on the dad.
Right.
Right. He wants people to be turning their heads when his daughter walks by. He just doesn't want to welcome those people into his family. Yeah. He doesn't want those people to have more domain than he does.
You know, he's just one of those stars that is incredible. Like, do you know Eddie Albert's? Like, because like when he's in this, he's weirdly at a career high because he's coming off of Green Acres, which was like a hugely popular sitcom. And I get because when I think of Eddie Albert, apart from this, I think of Roman Holiday, right? Which like and like Oklahoma, like he used to be. I think of him as fun and like kind of goofy and this sort of high energy actor. And then so I was trying to figure out like, how does he get cast here as this like stone man, like this just absolute bastard? But I forgot that in Green Acres, he's kind of this. I've never really seen Green Acres. I just know it's about like big city people who live on a farm, right?
It bizarrely was Romilly's favorite show growing up. So I've seen a lot of Green Acres. My sister was all in on Green Acres.
Did I make that up?
No, there is a pig, but the pig doesn't talk. You're conflating it with Mr. Ed.
That's okay, right. But in Green Acres, he's kind of the stiff in that, right? Because he's like the big businessman,
yes.
right? Yeah,
he's the stiff. Because she's like silly, but she's more charmed by everything going on around her. Even if she's like, I could never. He's more like grump. Yeah,
it's fucking 6 seasons of them just not wanting to run a farm. That's the premise.
I know.
Okay.
Can you just imagine Romilly just sitting glued to the television, putting on like disc after disc of Green Acres because it wasn't even on rotation anywhere. We had to buy her all the DVD
Nick
sets.
At Night. No one's gonna watch that in the 90s, right?
This is in the mid 2000s. She's born in 1998. Yeah. This is in the early to mid 2000s. She's watching Green Acres all day. And my mom, I just remember once us walking into the living room. She's sitting there an inch away from the television, watching her 10th episode in a row. And my mom just goes, "Why was it this show?"
It has a pig.
It has a pig. She liked that Eva Gabor was fancy, I think.
My favorite thing about Eddie Albert is that Albert is his middle name. His last name was Heimberger. And he changed his name from Heimberger because everyone called him Eddie Hamburger. He also used to be a trapeze performer, a nightclub singer. He co-hosted a radio show. He served in the war as a military intelligence officer who photographed U-boats. It's one of these things where you would read an obituary of a guy who was born in 1902 and it would just be the most staggering series because he lived through modern history and this guy fucking rules. I love him. He died at the age of 99 too.
Wow.
He was the voice of the Vulture on the Spider-Man cartoon show. Oh my God. He's the warden in The Longest Yard. He's just in everything. He's in the Witch Mountain movies. You just talk about a guy who, he's at the Concord Airport 78. These are just his post-Heartbreak Kid credits, which is essentially the beginning of the last chapter of his career, which lasts for another 25 years.
I mean, full respect to Eddie Albert. Should have won? No, I guess not, but whatever. Great Oscar nomination here, late in life.
As much as he's the stickler in this, he does get this great physical performance moment when Grodin has been invited to the boat the next day by Kelly, and Albert sees him approaching and runs to get the rope and push the boat off before Grodin can get onto it. I think that's a very fun, silly moment.
Yes.
The speed with which Grodin runs to the boat while also pulling his shirt off so he can land on the boat and be in I belong here mode, But here's another thing that I just forgot that this movie does so well, which is he tells Cybill so early on. It's their third scene together.
It's not a secret. Yes.
No. They're in the water, right? And then she walks away and he says, "I have to tell you, I'm married." And I went, is this going to be some dumb thing where because of the waves she doesn't hear him? And instead she comes back and she's like, "Oh, interesting."
She says, what else is new?
Right, because she's trying to play this weird blithe kind of oh yeah, I'm having fun on vacation. Yeah.
Right, so it becomes, he has to convince the parents and he has to figure out what to do about his wife. But I just love that that's halfway through the movie. And it's so now he has to be upfront with her because he really wants to end this and he has to win over the parents. It's not going to be 90 minutes of him coming up with new excuses to keep her in the room and lying to Cybill Shepherd, I just think there's a thing with older film comedies where they don't feel whatever the premise is can be the only premise for all of the running time. You do whatever the conflict is until you've run out of juice or it's strained credibility, and then you move on to the next thing that would happen, and then that becomes the next conflict.
Right.
And the scene, just the fucking pecan pie scene, him trying to break the news to her, all his wind up, all his buffering before he gets to it, which she thinks him.
He's dying.
Right. And there's that beautiful shot where she's consoling him, his head's down, he feels relieved, he's finally gotten through to her. She says, "I can't believe you never told me you were sick and dying." And then he just slowly looks up and barely avoids making eye contact with the camera directly. And he just cannot even hold his contempt for her and just says "I'm leaving you."
It's over.
Yeah.
The marriage is over.
there's a moment where you're like, oh, is the movie going to be him faking his death? And then he's like, I'm too, essentially arrogant to let that happen. Yes.
It just avoids all the things you worry it's going to get stuck doing.
Well, and then that scene where Elaine May's like, by the way, we're not leaving this. Like, where he's not saying I'm leaving you, and then we're going to cut away to him packing his bags. Nope. 5 more minutes, guys. Put him on the clock. Jeannie Berlin doesn't like this news, FYI.
Now, remind me, does the Eddie Albert scene happen before or after that, where he comes clean to them? Before, right? Because he says, I'm going to tell them at drinks, and then I'm going to take her out to dinner. There's that great moment, too, where he, like, comes back from having spent the whole day with the tan, changes into the shirt and tie immediately, is leaving again.
Yes. And he's like, oh, I'm taking you to dinner, 9 o'clock.
Right. And she's like, how did you get that tan? And he's like, I've been sitting on the lousy courthouse steps. How fast do you think the law moves in Florida? After he's previously told her that courts in Florida open at 7 a.m. Right. And he's got to go there the morning after a car crash.
And just the insincerity of every time acting like, I'm doing you a favor. You don't want to be. You have no idea what these courthouses are like.
You don't want to hang out with this army guy, the language that's going to be.
I wouldn't go to this neighborhood if I could avoid it. Just everything is always like, I love you so much. I can't make you do this. But then, the Eddie Albert thing of just, what's his immediate line he says in response? I'm looking here. Well, whatever it is, it's the end of that scene where, he says his fucking stay away from her. I don't hand out my daughter to newlyweds. He goes on his whole speech. And then like Lenny says, like, so you don't approve. And he says, not if they tied me to a horse and pulled me 40 miles by my tongue. And Charles Grodin's response is, I respect your frankness. It's so goddamn good.
It's so funny.
Here's a weird runner that I know is just off that scene. One of his responses to the newlywed thing is he's a nut, and he it's just said perfectly. But also earlier on, Cybill eats nuts at him with the bar and says thanks for the nut. And then earlier on in the movie, Lila, when she's eating the egg salad, she goes, I'm an egg salad nut, and it's just. I don't know. Nuts keep popping up in this movie. If someone wants to do a TV tropes like deep dive cinema sins on his trailers, what does the nut mean in terms of Heartbreak Kid? I'm here for it because I wrote it down and I circled it on the page.
They're a bunch of nuts. I don't know.
This movie's chock full of nuts. You reminded me, Avery, of the other just kind of like amazing directorial trick of this movie is just how good Elaine May is at the comedic reveal through edit, where how long she stays on Charles Grodin's face before cutting and showing us the cottage cheese around her mouth. Not cottage cheese. What is it?
Egg salad.
Egg salad. And the same thing with the suntan, Like in all those scenes, you understand that she's done something, that she looks horrible, and she holds off on cutting to Jeannie Berlin for as long as she possibly can. So it just builds in your mind until you get to the reveal. But yeah, I just love that, like, he has these two horrible, disastrous conversations, right? With the father and then with his wife. And then just cuts to him in New York signing the papers, trying to own up to his mistakes, right? This is my mistake I made. I have to own it. And then he just like a lunatic just flies to the Midwest.
Doesn't even get any cold weather clothes, which New York gets cold. He should have access to something, but he's constantly walking around Minnesota with his sport coat, pulled up around his neck and his flat cap just freezing.
But the joy that, this movie isn't going to give us 30 more minutes of comedy of misunderstanding and him trying to keep the lie spinning. The movie is now, this guy has done another incredibly reckless thing, has gone all in. He's pot committed to this relationship. And now the rest of the movie is 30 minutes of him trying to convince everyone to let him through the door,
And it's funny. Very, very funny. I mean, are almost funnier, or at least it's a thing where it's a perfect pivot. Like, I don't know, like I enjoy this section, but I also just enjoy it as this weird, fresh fish out of water nightmare thing that's happening.
Yeah. And he's so like guileless about it. He's just like, I'm ready. I'll wait. I'm fine. I'm going to do this.
I said I'd do it, so I did it.
Right. Stalking her on campus.
That moment where he's hiding behind a tree and then pops out at her.
Yeah. It also just underlines how much you're just like, you're in like an entirely different generation than her, you know?
Absolutely.
Like now you're seeing her amongst her own people, you know? Like the boys she should be dating, and you're a creepy old guy hiding behind structures.
He's almost twice her age.
Yeah.
Like of course Albert's gonna be upset enough even without the newlywed stuff.
And who is he? He has no money because he gave it all to the woman he just divorced. He sells athletic goods.
Everything about him gets across that, he talks about himself as a determined young man, and he is, in the sense that he's determined to get out of things. Like, he did 3 years in the army, didn't go overseas because of a minor back injury. Like, he works incredibly hard at getting out of his commitments.
Yes, he's bullheaded, just entirely uselessly.
But just the beauty of, like, he finally kind of wears Cybill Shepherd down. They have that scene that is one of the a Griff pick for top 10 sexiest scenes in the history of cinema.
Yes.
Elaine May distilling exactly what I find sexy.
Also, crazy. Like the Last Picture Show has an iconic undressing scene, right? On the diving board.
She goes to the nudist party.
Right. Yes. And then 1 year later, I mean, like, what does Cybill Shepherd do after this? Because I have to imagine she was like, I have to stop being a fucking ingenue. But I guess no, because the next movie is Daisy Miller, which is like the ultimate ingenue.
Right. Then she becomes, exactly. Bogdanovich's mule. Mule. Jesus Christ. I wish Peter Bogdanovich would make the Mule 2
wow.
Lady Mule.
Oh, but it's Bogdanovich and he's a dandy. He's got like a
no. Bogdanovich directing. Cybill is the mule. I mean, Bogdanovich also plays the drug king.
That would be fun too. I just like the idea that Bogdanovich is a drug mule, and he his cover story is that he's always driving to the next DVD special feature that he has to tape 10 minutes for. Right. And that's why he has the cravat and he's like, officer, I'm so sorry. I have to go. I need to, give my perspective on, the Magnificent Ambersons. Like, I just have to go.
I remember Orson said to me, it's such a good title. You shouldn't even make the picture. That's his Paper Moon story he always tells. That he said, Orson, I don't know what it's about yet, but I have an idea of a title for a picture. What do you think about a picture called Paper Moon? And Orson said, it's such a good title, you shouldn't even bother making the picture.
I just imagine them both in like smoking jackets on like a clear table just covered in cocaine. One of those glass tables.
So I'm flipping the pitch. It's Cybill Shepherd directs Peter Bogdanovich in the Mule.
That sounds great. Right.
And
that sounds good.
Yeah, Peter's the Mule. I just think the Mule should turn into one of those like, wait, there are 8 Jarhead movies, direct-to-video franchises, where each time it's a different octogenarian
the Mule 3 Alaska
actor, right? But increasingly, it becomes people like Peter Bogdanovich, where it's like, well, he can't be the lead of a studio movie. We can,
right? The Mule 4, he could.
We can film in Bulgaria and pretend it's set in Rodeo Drive.
Right.
Mule Day of the Soldado.
I want Mule Day of the Soldado.
Oh, God, yes. Guys, this is great. We're gonna be billionaires.
Yeah, we'll put it on the slate. Blank Check Pictures, our first franchise, But yes, the dinner scene, right? You have this incredibly sexy scene where, unlike the Last Picture Show scene, it is cloaked in absolute darkness. You see less than nothing, right? And it's just about this promise of they're not going to touch. They're going to get as close to each other as possible without touching. And they do so, and it is so thrilling. And then she brings him over for dinner, and he does his fucking thing. I'll just quote the part of it. Because this was my backup if I couldn't find the full long intro I wanted to do originally.
Sure.
He says, "This is honest food. There's no lying in that beef. There's no insincerity in these potatoes. There's no deceit in the cauliflower. This is a totally honest meal." And he's framing it as like, my entire life I've wanted an honest meal. I finally found honest food. And then it's almost a hard cut to them walking into the office, closing the door behind him, and Eddie Albert saying, "During dinner tonight, I was listening. I find that I can tell more about a man by listening to his dinner table conversation than by reading all the books in the world. I heard everything you said about honest food." And Charles Grodin is like nodding excitedly, like he's nailed it.
I fucking landed this.
Yeah. And then just the delivery on, "I have never heard such a crock of horseshit in my life. There's no deceit in the cauliflower."
I mean, the fact that he's praising the honesty and integrity of these food. We've spent the whole movie watching him lie.
Yeah.
He loves deceit.
This is a good point. It's really the only tool he has. That's really the entire Swiss Army knife for him.
Yes.
Even like when he's getting rid of the boyfriend at the college, Cybill's boyfriend, and he's like, "Well, obviously I'll pretend to be a federal narcotics agent," and like somehow has a fake badge that we have no explanation for.
It's a great question. Like, there's probably a whole prequel to this movie about like what how he sells his athletic goods, and probably like, he deploys all kinds of underhanded tactics.
As a veteran, I want you to purchase this wiffle ball bat set. Yeah, I guess maybe the badge is left over from the army somehow.
Right. Oh my God. But he pulls it off. Like you said, we have that hard cut from, like to him, like whatever. He convinces him, or that he breaks down the wall, I guess.
And then he's trapped in his like time enough at last Twilight Zone ending of like, I got to be around wasps for the rest of my life. I got to have these fucking conversations.
People walking out of the theater to that? Yeah. Like, what are I mean, because this movie was a comparable hit compared to like everything else she made.
But you compare this. I mean, this movie is such an interesting parallel to The Graduate, right? Like, it's the second Nichols film, it's the second May film. It's a breakthrough for both of them, but then their directing careers obviously go in very different directions. And Graduate was not just a hit; it was like a cultural phenomenon and like an Oscar darling. And this was more of like a hit. But
nothing crazy.
Right. And I do think it's like, as much as people talk about like, holy shit, the ending of The Graduate, when you see him looking off there and realizing there's something kind of easily digestible about it, right? I saw a quote, I don't know if it was in the Bright Wall Dark Room piece I've been citing, or another one I read, but saying that like, as opposed to Neil Simon, who makes comedies that go down easy, Elaine May makes movies that get stuck in your throat. And there is just such a difference to the tone of this ending of, and now this is the first day of the rest of his life, versus that exact same type of ending in The Graduate, which is underscored with, Simon and Garfunkel, and feels kind of like sweet and self-pitying rather than an existential nightmare.
It's kind of a who knows what next. Like, are they scared? Are they like regretting? Are they, it's much more ambiguous. This is, he's in hell. He's trapped in a glass case, and he can never escape until I guess he tries again. And
he's thinking of Lila. Like, he's humming.
Yes. He's humming Why Do Birds or whatever, one of their tunes, yes.
And this is a man who we know, once he gets himself cemented into a situation, immediately wants out of it and is thinking of the greener grass on the other side. Yeah. And he's got to be thinking, I messed up. I gotta get back with Lila somehow.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, this movie just rules. It's fucking perfect. And then
it's good movie.
Good movie.
It feels like she could have had an easy career path trying to do this kind of thing again, right?
Be one of America's foremost directors, witty director. Like, do some Neil Simons, do Right.
Get a best-selling paperback,
Yeah, just movies for the sort of hoi polloi, the chattering classes. Or
and it feels like the same way she was just like, I've done that. I don't really want to do that again. Cassavetes loves this movie. He's the one who reaches out to her and is like, I want to do something together. And so that's the thing that excites her more, is doing something entirely different. Whereas Grodin, I think, really wants to keep doing this and can't find as good of a match, at least for him as a leading man.
Artistically, who'll let him, right. He had to wait until he met this curious Saint Bernard. I mean, he finally found the right collaborator again.
Finally. So I saw people tweeting about this a couple months ago when we knew that we were going to do this episode. And I still can't get the exact straight answer. But as to why this film is so out of circulation, there was a DVD that was already out of print by the mid 2000s. Like, I remember,
that's the DVD I bought on eBay. It's an Anchor Bay DVD, and it sucks. The transfer is awful.
It's from like 2000 shit. Even. It was only in print for like a year. Like, even my one semester of film school before I dropped out Charles Grodin style of anything that gave me too much pressure. I remember a student organized screening of this movie on a projector from a DVD, and it was a big deal because they were like, we got a copy. No one can see this movie. Like, this movie is so hard to find. The DVDs go for so much money now. And then that was now, 15 years ago almost. And it's only become more difficult. It never was re-released. It was never on Blu-ray. It, I think, was on Netflix for like a weird period of like 2 months in 2010. And then now it'll pop up on YouTube. It'll get pulled, but it's mostly sort of traded. And by all accounts, it was produced by Palomar Pictures. And I don't understand why this movie ended up in a more complicated fate than the other Palomar movies. But Palomar was a subsidiary of ABC.
Sure.
And then before Disney bought ABC, Bristol Myers acquired a majority stake, the pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And they just, every time apparently anyone has tried to re-release this movie, I'm sure Criterion's tried, everyone's fucking tried, the asking price they throw out is just absurd. Because they're just like, this is how much money we make selling pills. We're not a movie studio. We have ended up with these rights. There are other Palomar movies, like They Shoot Horses, don't they? The Birthday Party, Take the Money and Run, Sleuth, that I know are like, but Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original Stepford Wives. I mean, these movies are out there. Somehow this movie got fucked. And whatever this company's called, not Meyer-Briggs, Bristol Myers has like the final say over anything that happens. And apparently they just always go, we would rather make no money than license it out for $40,000, or even $200,000. We want $10 million.
The whole thing, like, I have to assume Criterion did the big Mikey and Nikki. Like, whenever I talk to them, they're like, it can take years. Like, just the process of essentially doing what you're coaxing the rights from someone or coaxing a filmmaker out, to be like, hey, do you want to like help us restore your movie or whatever? But like, so maybe, hopefully one day they or someone like them can do a proper, remaster of this movie, which it needs desperately.
It just feels like one of those things where this company won't even pick up the fucking phone.
Fuck them. They gotta figure it out.
It's just one of these things, not to spiral out too much, but that scares me about like fucking companies like AT&T buying Warner Brothers, because they start looking at it and go like, why would we make A Star Is Born? That's nothing. That's $200 million. That's nothing to us.
The whole thing that happens, because that's, as much as it's freaking out, it's always been true. It's always been true. Studios get bought by these companies, and then like Coca-Cola owned one of the company, Warner Brothers. I can't remember who. Columbia, maybe.
They owned Columbia when she was making Ishtar. That's one of the things that fucked over Ishtar.
Right. Yeah, and then that 10 years in, they're like, why are we doing this?
Right.
We keep having problems with the movies they make. Like, sell this. Like, fucking flip Columbia to whoever wants it. We don't want it anymore. Yeah. Anyway, hopefully. Is there anything left?
Just that, I mean, fingers crossed with this Dakota Johnson movie supposedly happening.
man.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe Elaine May gets enough buzz and clout that enough people
know.
want this, to get a proper release.
We were originally going to do Elaine May last April, and then that story came out of like, oh, Dakota Johnson says she's making a movie with Elaine May, and then we realized we were going to do our Razzies versus Oscars bracket, and she was the only female director who would fit into either quadrant, unfortunately.
Yes.
So we were like, we have to hold on. But then with COVID and everything, we're just like, I don't know, like, is this movie going to happen? She's 88 years old now. Production is in such a weird state, you know? And it always felt like the movie was just kind of at early formative stages.
Who knows?
But I want nothing more than to see her make another movie. Yeah.
Nothing more. I would die for it.
It would be really like a lovely argument for generational Hollywood stardom. Like, as much as I detest seeing like these legacy actors, like if Dakota Johnson is using her like family connection to Hollywood and I guess love of old film to be like, Elaine May needs to be out there, that might redeem that nepotistic system for me for a moment.
But not only that, Avery, I'm sorry. Ellen, That's Not the Truth is maybe the best Elaine May movie that Elaine May never directed. The Dakota Johnson, Ellen DeGeneres birthday party interview it's what we're talking about.
Kiss.
Like, that alone makes me go like, oh, Dakota Johnson would be a good Elaine May protagonist.
Yeah.
Right.
David, I need to do a third solo ad read because we have 3 ads per episode. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Like, I don't know, everything? The unbearable weight of the human condition? You know, the basic fact that consciousness is a prison? Well, BetterHelp can assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours, okay? It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. And maybe you're sitting there going, yeah, it's not available in my area. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. No services are available to me. Well, this service, the one I'm talking about right now, it's available for clients worldwide, the whole planet. So unless you're on Mars, you're eligible. And I hope you're not on Mars because I've heard that Mars needs moms. There's a great mom shortage on Mars. Look, you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. So here's the deal. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. You visit their website, read their testimonials that are posted daily. Like, I don't know, let me pick out this one. Sarah is very easy to talk to. If I had more time, I'd say more, but she's been lovely. That's a review from someone who is seemingly very busy. Too busy to write a longer review. I hope busy with good things, right? What about this one? She is so good. I appreciate her a lot, and I would totally recommend her to anyone that is looking for help. Can't get better than that review. Look, here's what you gotta do, okay? Go to betterhelp.com/check. That's better, HELP. And join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 nifty United States. Should mention very clearly that this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Blank Check listeners can now get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/check. That's BETTERHELP.com/check.
Box office game.
And sorry, can I talk about the remake for a second?
Yeah,
if we're going to do that box office.
We talked about two options because we can't find the box office for this. So we're saying we'll either do the top 10 of 1972. Okay, we'll do them both quickly, and we'll do the top 10, the top 5 when the remake came out.
The remake came out when I was trying university for the second time. I have tried 3 times and never completed. Very Charles Grodin-esque.
Hell yeah.
But the second time I was at university, the Cineworld cinema near me, a franchise people from England or who have spent time in England might know of, they had a sort of precursor to MoviePass called Cineworld Unlimited, where you pay, £11 a month and you can go see as many movies as you like. And I signed up for this knowing that I would be skipping classes and going to see films, so I should get the best bang for my buck, not knowing that Cineworld, or at least the one near me, had just trash movies.
Right. It was like the runoff theater.
Yeah. So I saw, and, I had to get the value out of my unlimited card. So I saw the Heartbreak Kid remake twice in theaters.
Wow.
I saw Dan in Real Life twice in theaters.
You put it on your tab.
Good Luck Chuck twice in theaters. I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry. It was a Chuck-heavy year for movies.
A lot of Chucks. How many Chucks could a industry chuck?
Too many.
So that's my experience with Heartbreak Kid. Seeing it for free twice, hating it, obviously.
Well, fuck it. Let's do it right now. Then
Okay,
hell
yeah.
Like right now. All right. October 5th, 2007. Look, maybe we'll do the Farrellys one day. Maybe we'll do this again. But
I didn't see this in theaters. The one thing I remember vividly is this movie underperforms. It comes out in a dead period where it should have had an easy big number 1. It underperforms, and the studio's spin on it was that the movie had come out the same weekend that Halo 3 came out. And it was the first time that the movie studios said, like, we scheduled ourselves against a video game too big.
We fucked up, right? The kids are all home with their Xboxes. That's hilarious.
What do you want? The World of Warcraft expansion just released. What do you expect?
What do you expect? Okay.
That is so funny because it's absolutely right. It came out like days after Halo 3 came out. October 5th, 2007. It opened at number 2, $14 million. Nothing to be ashamed of these days for a comedy, but yes, for a Ben Stiller vehicle, even if it was an R-rated one.
And this is him reteaming with Something About Mary People. This is like 6 months after Night at the Museum.
Especially when you hear what number 1 is. It's a holdover. It was number 1 the last week. It is a Disney family comedy.
The Game Plan?
The last Buena Vista film. Yes, The Game Plan. Starring The Rock.
Big hit.
And he's a football player. And he's got a kid who wants to do ballet or something. I have never seen The Game Plan.
David, that kid was not part of the game plan for him.
Kid was not part of the game plan. I remember there's a dog. He's like holding a dog. It's like one of those things where he's like, I'm a football player. Here's this kid who's in a tutu, and I'm holding a dog. Like,
he looks flummoxed.
It's everything right now.
Yeah.
He's flummoxed as hell.
It is fascinating, and I feel like under-discussed that there was that 6-year period where The Rock was like, I am only a kid star.
Yeah.
Like, it was like Witch Mountain, Game Plan, Tooth Fairy. Like, he was like, I just do family movies. Where when he came back to doing action in Fast 5, people were like, oh
right, oh yeah, you were a famous athlete, wrestler.
Oh, you're holding a gun. Oh,
I enjoy this,
Mr. Game Plan.
40 of
Oh
these?
right, you are covered in muscles. I forgot about those.
That's the other thing. He slimmed down. He lost a bunch of weight in the family movie because he was like, I want to be less scary. Anyway. Okay, so The Game Plan's number 1. That's embarrassing. Number 2
it is embarrassing.
Is Heartbreak Kid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Number 3 is the movie that I covered the red carpet for in London, and one of the stars of it drove his Hummer down the red carpet and into the lobby of the Odeon Leicester Square.
The Kingdom?
The Kingdom.
Yes.
Jamie Foxx.
The 2 red carpets, if you bring that up, I know it's either going to be The Kingdom or Lions for Lambs.
I covered many red carpets, but those were the 2.
Those are the 2 that always come up.
Funniest things happened. Right. He came out, he pop and locked into several like poses for the photographers. He said, The Kingdom, go see it. He got back in the Hummer. It reversed up. He did not even pretend to go into the theater to watch the movie. And then Jennifer Garner told me she would never let her kid act, and I wrote that up for people and got like a bajillion hits.
She rolls.
So my boss was like, "Great job on the Kingdom red carpet."
Yeah, Jennifer Garner, great mom.
Have never seen the Kingdom.
Me neither. I just love Jamie Foxx turning to a bunch of people on the red carpet and saying, "Go see it." It feels like a slap in the face.
We're not invited.
We'd be there if they gave us a ticket. We're out here behind railings,
Kingdom,
barricaded in like animals.
I remember being really hyped for that movie because Peter Berg seemed like this really exciting, because he'd just done Friday Night Lights, which was like, oh, this movie's kind of like tender and interesting. And like, he's got Jamie Foxx coming off an Oscar win, I think. Reese, Ray is what? When's Ray? 2005?
It's right after. Yeah.
Right
I mean, that was one of the first things he shot entirely after the Oscar.
You've got Garner and you've got Jason Bateman in a dramatic role, and like Arrested Development is still, this cool thing that just, is still on, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then like everyone was just like, meh, and I never saw it. And so I've never seen The Kingdom.
I had the same excitement and never saw it.
Avery, have you seen The Kingdom?
I have not even heard of The Kingdom.
It's set in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, okay. One of my favorite kingdoms.
It's like a gritty, modern, contemporary like war movie, I guess. But they're like, maybe they're FBI agents or I don't know what they're doing.
But it is like, I'm just looking at this now, and it's like you say that and I get bored, but then I just go like, but it's starring Jamie Foxx, Chris Cooper, Jennifer Garner, Jason Bateman. That has to be a little bit interesting, right? And I've never heard anyone say anything more enthusiastic than it's fine.
Right. Oh, yeah, whatever. Okay. Number 4. It's a series we'll do on the Patreon one day. It is entry number 3.
Is it Saw 3 or Saw 4? No.
Not Saw. It's not a Saw.
Oh, because, it wouldn't have a number. You don't know.
It's the 3rd.
It's Resident Evil Apocalypse?
Nope. That's the 2nd, but good. Correct answer. Correct franchise.
Oh, Extinction.
It's the one where it finally was like, oh, this is cooking with gas.
Yeah.
I will say. Because the first one is a fun throwback thing. The second one, in my opinion, is not very good. The third one is where you're like, okay.
I've only seen first and last. A good argument for doing them all.
We got to do it. It's great movies. Number 5. Oh, boy. This is sort of why I wanted to do this. I do remember this by name. It is a fantasy film. It is an adaptation, I believe, of a popular young adult series, and my guess is they wanted to do more of them, but obviously no one saw it.
The Secret of the Dark is Rising?
I mean, like, that's pretty fast for you to get The Secret of the Dark is Rising.
You know why?
Opening at number 5 to $3 million, I might point out.
That's why.
The Dark was not rising.
It's one of the worst openings of all time. It still charts pretty high up there in terms of low opening for that many screens, that it had such big franchise ambitions. And also, when you said, I remember the title, I knew it was this, because it's just one of the most apocalyptically bad titles ever. It's up there with Ballistic X versus Sever, where it's like, you're saying so much and yet not anything at all.
Can I ask, do you guys know, this is one of my most hated pet peeves in like film and media, games, TV, whatever. What is the obsession with things rising?
I don't know.
They're always rising.
It's just constant. Like,
rising.
Yeah.
If people can't think of a title for their thing, they'll be like, well, does anyone rise in it? And then can we...
I have to say also, it just like... I think without fail, Dawn always gets me more excited than Rise, right?
I don't love Dawn either, though.
I don't love it, but it hits more for me. I don't think Rise has ever gotten a rise out of me.
It's funny since Planet of the Apes did both. It did
I know.
Rise and then Dawn.
And arguably did them in the wrong order.
It absolutely did them in the wrong order. It made no sense when they announced that it was Dawn. I was like, the fucking sun already rose. It can't be Dawn now. It's in the sky in your metaphor. And then they went to war for 3. I'm like, this has nothing to do with the weather.
But it's also like you look at I'm sure if you look at the synopsis on the back of the DVD, it says like in Dawn of the Planet of the apes rise to power. Rise of the Planet of the Apes say the dawn of a new species.
The most recent example is like this game just came out, Immortals: Phoenix Rising, and I just hate that they think I'm meant to look at that and go, oh, Phoenix is rising in this one. Yeah. It's like, I don't know who that is.
It's the whole thing. The Seeker. I don't know who's the Seeker. I don't care. All right. Don't worry about it. The Dark is rising, and I'm like, all right, 10 tickets, please. Like, like what else? Oh God. Anyway, that's the top 5. Yes.
Can I just say, okay, very quick side tangent. But talking about titles with this many words, it just fucking, what are you saying? I zone out, right? The power of a good one-word title. I was looking earlier through, careers of the actors in this movie and trying to chart them all. And Jeannie Berlin, who's so great in this, gets an Oscar nomination, essentially does like 3 more movies and then doesn't act for like 15 years, writes a movie that her and her mother in, doesn't act for another 11 years until Margaret, and now has come back and has become like a fucking awesome older character actor. She's on Succession.
Right. Margaret's in Hunters.
Hunters. Right, she just rules. She rules in everything now, right? She's so good. I feel like she's finally getting appreciated in the way she should have.
When she was in Margaret, though, it was mind-blowing. It was like, Jeannie Berlin?
Yeah,
like,
what the fuck? Yeah. Given just like a Hall of Fame performance. So I was looking at the movie she did right after this, and this same year, she makes a movie directed by Larry Cohen, sort of great trash filmmaker
of Bone.
David, do you know about Bone?
I only know that it's a Larry Cohen movie with Yaphet Kotto. I've never seen it. I don't know much about it. Yes.
So this is all I want to tell you, and then we can move on. This is all I want to tell you, okay? This is the IMDb synopsis. When a criminal breaks into the Beverly Hills home of a wealthy couple having marital problems, he unwillingly provides the spouses with an unlikely resolution to their conflicts, as well as a solution to his own secret problem. Starring Yaphet Kotto, and the poster is black and white background, full body shot of Yaphet with a hand on a hip, smiling, and then in just black stark letters, it says, "Love Bone before he loves you." Why did no one tell me that Bone is the great American movie?
I don't know. Griffin. I guess I gotta watch Bone.
Love Bone before he loves you. Nothing could get me into the theater faster.
Is his solution to their marital problems like have sex with your wife or I will?
I hope it's fuck Bone. I hope this movie's about everyone fucking Bone.
Yeah.
Everyone should fuck Bone. I don't know. Everyone should fucking Bone watches. I don't know what's going to happen. I got to check it out. Is Bone on Prime Video?
Oh, I'm watching it tonight.
All right, 1972 in film. Let's do this quickly.
Fast.
This is I only wanted to do this because it's just like, this is where you are like, oh, it is another world. Like you look at an 80s box office, you're like, oh, come on, there's a lot of sequels, there's a lot of action movies. All right, so number 1, obviously, what's the number 1 movie in 1972, Griffin?
Is The Godfather.
It's The Godfather, one of the most successful films ever made at the time. To this day, if you adjust for inflation, it's The Godfather. Now, number 2 is a prototype blockbuster, a disaster film, a famous disaster film.
Is it Poseidon?
It's The Poseidon Adventure. That's right. It made half as much as The Godfather, but that is the movie where you're like, oh, right, like the seeds are planted here. Mm-hmm. Right, for the sort of modern blockbuster, even if this is the Poseidon Adventure, sort of like weird half character, movie, half disaster epic, right? I don't know. Do you like the Poseidon Adventure, Griffin? No,
I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fun.
Those feel like movies that just never feels like there's any argument to revisit the 70s Irwin Allen disaster movies, as much as I find the idea of them charming.
Not really. They're right.
I've just never heard anyone present them in a way where it's like, that movie is still of intrigue to watch today.
They're watchable. But you're right. Yes, they're not great art, and they're prototypes in a lot of ways. Now, number 3, though, that Griffin, we were talking about him a lot. He's a hot director this year. Last year he made an incredible debut film that got all kinds of Oscar attention. It launched big stars. Who is it, Griffin?
We've been talking about him in this episode, 1971. He launches 2 big stars. It's obviously not Mike Nichols.
Multiple big stars. Not Mike Nichols, no.
It launches multiple big stars.
It might be two.
Okay, but a comedy director?
This is a comedy. The 1971 film is a drama.
Huh.
We were talking about, who did we talk about so much in this episode?
I just keep thinking about Nichols. You did a bit about Bogdanovich.
Peter Bogdanovich.
So this is Paper Moon?
Nope. Which was also a hit, but nope. What's the number 3 movie of 1972?
What's Up, Doc?
What's Up, Doc?
What's
I
Up,
forgot.
Doc?
Last Picture Show was not a debut. I forgot he made Targets before, but early, obviously his breakthrough film. Yes.
Yeah.
But yes, What's Up? Isn't that crazy? What's Up, Doc? The 3rd most successful film of the year. Great movie.
Yeah, rules.
You should watch it. It's so much fun.
One of Ben's best Letterboxd reviews. He watched What's Up, Docs over the summer, and he just wrote, "Maybe old movies are good."
Broke my heart that Ben couldn't do this episode, by the way.
I know.
Absolutely. I was the Heartbreak Kid in that sense.
Number 4, Griffin, a Best Picture nominee, an iconic film, with famous scenes that are remembered to this day, with a big star. Still pretty crazy that it's number 4, most successful of the year. Like a harrowing R-rated thriller
with a big star.
Yeah, a big star. I mean, his stardom is on the rise, but yeah.
Is it Straw Dogs?
Not Straw Dogs, but you're in the right zone.
In the right zone. So like that kind of star.
It's like a sort of shocking, transgressive film.
Deer Hunter.
Not Deer Hunter.
It's not Marathon Man.
Not Marathon Man. These are all good 70s films that were shocking.
Fuck. It's not Conversation because that's after Godfather. Fuck. But a big shot. Like there's a scene that's still kind of iconic.
Well, yes. I mean, there's multiple scenes that are iconic in this film, but there's one that's iconic in a fun way. It's a musical scene in a film that is otherwise not musical.
Do you know what it is, Avery?
Is it Deliverance?
It's Deliverance.
Oh.
John Boorman's Deliverance with Burt Reynolds and John Voight and Nate Beatty.
Why am I killing 1972 more than
I don't know.
2000?
Thrashing it is absolutely.
Yeah.
Deliverance. Number 4, Griffin. Number 4. And number 5 is a less well-remembered film, except as a GIF. It's an iconic GIF.
Jeremiah Johnson.
Or GIF. Jeremiah Johnson. Robert Redford is Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah, wild.
A good movie.
I've never seen it.
Movie.
I was so astonished by the recent realization that people think that GIF is Galifianakis.
Yes,
I can't
know
see
people...
it as Redford.
I cannot. Really?
Yeah.
You've been Galifianakis pilled.
I get that it surprises people that it's Redford because he's like very full-faced in it. It's not like the sort of classic Redford profile. He looks like he has this like sort of big chin, but it's just the beard, I think. Like it's just here, I'm gonna make it my background now. Now I just
it's like a great guy.
Honestly, like The Revenant is just Jeremiah Johnson.
Interesting.
Just
but
like
good?
A more that's what I'm saying. Like a more gritty and like there he is.
God, it's so good. He looks so good. Avery, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for crushing the box office game.
Oh my God, Avery, thank you for staying up through all that. Jeez.
Oh yeah, no.
Thank you for being a good friend. You're recording this in your time zone, which is pretty wild. But David was like, I don't know if it might be tough to record with Avery, and I was like, I think Avery and I have similar sleep schedules, which means I think we'll be able to record the episode around our usual time.
Yeah.
That was my guess.
Yeah, it's 4 a.m. here, so I'll be going to bed in 5 hours.
Yep.
Respect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how I live. It's great. I essentially have bartender hours now because I just everything I do starts at 8 or 9 p.m. I never leave my home, and I spend my whole day ramping up so my energy peaks at like 8:15.
Respect to all of you guys.
It's great. I'm so happy. I feel really well adjusted. Avery, people should follow you on Twitter.
Yes.
You have maybe the best Patreon of anybody, where you offer absolutely nothing.
Nothing. You get nothing.
You get nothing. It's $2, and you make it very clear that you're not promising people anything in return.
Nothing, because I've not been capable of making things for a long time. If you're a fan of podcasts, which you might be if you are listening to this right now, then I made 4, maybe 5, I can't remember, episodes of a podcast called Swings and Roundabouts a few years ago.
Yes.
It's a great show. We plugged it on Blank Check back in the day.
Yeah, I remember.
A great listen.
It's a scripted thing. I do a lot of voices and have other people voice and the sound effects, and I think it's interesting. It's like stories from my past, but with like twists, and there's also fun little segments with like game shows that I made up and stuff, because it's hard to do a sketch that isn't a game show when you watch too much SNL a few years ago, I found out. Yeah, so please, it's still up at swingsandroundaboutspodcast.com, so check that out.
And let's make it clear, you've posted daily podcasts on your Patreon. You're just not promising that to people. They shouldn't get used to that.
Yeah, I might do it
if you feel like it.
Yeah, but yeah. I wish I could charge $1. Patreon recommends you charge $2 because of the way their fees are structured. So I'm like, okay, and yeah, you get nothing. But my Twitter is pretty good.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You can buy naked pictures of me on there if you like. You know, there are some famous directors who have done so, who I will not name because I provide excellent customer service.
Hell yeah.
Thanks again. I look forward to getting a Pizza Express at some point 10 years in the future when we can travel again.
Pizza Express.
Avery and I had like Pizza Express hangouts in London. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Dough balls forever.
Dough balls forever. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to The Great American Novel for our theme song. Thank you to our editing team, Alex Barron and AJ McKeon. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media. Thank you to Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit. Check out our Shopify page for some real nerdy shirts and other types of merch. Patreon, we're trekking along. Right? We're still trekking at this point.
Absolutely.
Tune in next week for Mikey and Nikki. And as always, I just want to point out, I sent in the chat of our Zoom the poster for Bone. And now that I'm seeing it full size, it is clear that in the poster, Yaphet Kotto, playing the character of Bone, is holding a rat.
He's holding a rat, possibly dead.
I think that might be the solution to their marital problems?
I don't know. We can't go any further here. We don't know.
I like Bone.
There's too many questions.
I like Bone.
You love Bone.
Well, I got it before he loves me.